I mean, that's a story I haven't thought about in probably 15 years. But yeah, like our parents had gone out to dinner that night, and then like it was a bunch of us from the neighborhood. We were all at my house.
Yeah. So yeah, all of our families were friends, and they didn't get to go out a lot to have dinner. So the few times where it was like, hey, let's all go out. We'll put all the kids in one house. We'll order them pizza. It'll be fine.
Because like the older of us was like me and like one other person. We were probably like 13 at the time.
13 or 14, I think.
Yeah,
because I think I was maybe 10. I distinctly remember though we were at your house.
Right.
We were in your room watching Freddy versus Jason. And I remember at the time it was one of my first times seeing it, so it was all new to me, and it was kind of freaking me out.
Oh, I bet.
And the entire time you're just like, oh, Bug, it gets better. It gets better. Just keep watching it. And at one point we were in the movie, and I want to say it was maybe halfway through. All of a sudden, your brother comes in with another one of our family friends. Comes in and says, "Hey, Derek, there's somebody in the driveway." Your driveway at your house was longer than all of ours. It was like a long dirt road to get to your house.
My parents' house sat like way far back on the lot.
Right.
So there was like a long dirt driveway there.
And I just found out today that lot was juxtaposed to a watermelon field.
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah.
A patch?
That's right.
A melon patch?
A big watermelon.
Something like that.
Yep.
I just lived next to a little body of water where the mob would dump bodies.
Yeah, we'll have to tell that story someday.
I can't. I'm not allowed to. Anyway, please continue.
But yeah, this car comes in, pulls up halfway into your driveway, and your brother is like, "There's a car in our driveway, and it's just sitting there with the headlights on." So we all come out of your room. We're all in, and Derek's house has like this big living room with like these big open windows.
Yeah, it's a big bay window.
Yeah.
And so the problem is like from the street, if we have the lights on, like you can see right into the front house, like into that front room.
Because I don't even think you had blinds.
No, not really. Not probably during that era. No. So yeah, it's like we're looking out at this car, and I'm sure like we're freaking out of just like, well, all of our parents are gone. We are all.
It's probably around 9:30, 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, it's well dark.
Okay.
At that point,
and there's probably 8 of us in the house.
Yeah,
eight
maybe.
of us of varying ages. But this car is just sitting there with the headlights on. So, we're trying to call our parents. Nobody's really picking up. And this was, I guess, texting was around at that time. But our parents didn't really text. So we're kind of sitting here not knowing what to do. And like this car is just in your driveway. We don't recognize the headlights. We can't really tell what the body of the car is. Like maybe it's a Jeep, maybe it's a truck.
right?
So, but at one point, we get so freaked out. And I remember this earlier. Your brother was like, "We're just going to shut the lights off."
Right.
We all kind of like quickly game planned because you like went into your laundry room garage, locked that door. Jason is like checking. Jason is Derek's brother.
Okay.
Is like checking the back door, the front door, make sure all those are locked. And we are just like all in the living room, like huddled down with the lights off. This goes on for about maybe 5-10 more minutes. And then the vehicle out in the driveway shuts his headlights off.
Woof.
And at this point,
you could still see the silhouette of this car because it's like, well, they're not leaving. They're just out there.
So I don't know if this person was just like, well, I'm not going to kill my battery just sitting here staring at these kids scared shitless in this house. But the headlights go off. Meanwhile, we're still trying to call parents. Finally, maybe another 5 minutes goes by. The headlights come back on. Same location. We can still see it, but the headlights come back on. It slowly starts to like back out of the driveway. We finally, I don't know if it was Derek or somebody else, gets a hold of one of the parents, and we find out, oh, that's Mr. So-and-so from down the street. They were coming to check on you guys since we're like over 45 minutes away.
Okay.
And nobody thought to tell us.
Okay, no, I have to interject here. Even if they had, that guy's a fuck. That guy's a creep. Fuck that guy. If you're a neighbor and you're coming to check on the kids, don't stalk them. Check on them, sure, but like, don't just sit and just stare, because that makes them a terrible babysitter. all you shapes and pure evil, and welcome back to the Third Channel Podcast. Oh, really quick, before we finish the rest of this intro, you might have just heard some breathing at the outset of our theme song, created, of course, by Fly Guy Ty. You might have heard a little bit of breathing. So pin in that. But yes, welcome back to the Third Channel Podcast,
where we delve into the horror franchises you love from the perspectives of a lifelong horror fan
and a newbie to the genre. I'm PJ.
And I'm Derek.
And today, the only thing we're here to talk about is the evil. It's gone. This is a good day. This is one that I have been, this is part of the reason that we're doing this show, this franchise. Mm-hmm. I think you could argue that this is the most important movie we'll talk about.
Yeah, that's pretty safe to say.
For our genre, for the thing that we have started the show to do, to discuss, I would say that anybody could make the argument that this is the reason all of these things exist, that it didn't peter out in the early 80s. Of course, we're here to talk about John Carpenter's, in that classic text, Halloween.
That is absolutely right.
Where some things happen. Mm-hmm. People, specifically young people, are murdered horribly. And then a crazy man screams a lot. And now that I've gone over that whole movie, we can talk about something else.
Yeah, just something else. Speaking of, children being murdered.
Yes.
Thankfully, we weren't. In that story we were just telling, again, guys, you've heard strange voices on these mics before that are not just the newbie and the schmoobie here.
I love that has caught on for this show. What a dumb series of words. Yes. So that is correct. There are odd voices coming from the dark.
Mm-hmm. And the one today is it's from an individual we have mentioned several times on this show.
Many, yeah.
Welcome, Bug.
Thank you, guys.
Yes.
I am terribly excited to be here. I'm literally shaking right now.
Good. I'm glad. The anxiety of sitting down to do this show is the only thing that has kept me alive for the last several months.
That
and all the medicine.
It's good. It's good you have it. Bug is how do we know each other?
Oh, we've known each other since I was probably nine or 10. I remember the first time we actually met face to face.
Yeah.
I was at my cousin of a cousin's house.
Right. Who was my best friend at the time. He lived about 8 houses down from me.
Yeah. Because we all lived in like a big circle, like an inverse cul-de-sac, like an actual circle.
Okay.
Yeah. And Bug and I are from a small rural town, Wauchula, Florida. And we lived on, a neighborhood that was a circle. Several houses down. My best friend at the time lived there. Mm-hmm. And there was one night we were down there and playing basketball. He had a basketball hoop in the driveway. Mm-hmm. And he introduced me to this like kid friend of his. Because you're like, what, 4 years younger than I am?
Yeah, 4 years, I think.
Yeah. And so... But you lived like catty corner to catty corner from him on the opposite side of the circle.
Yeah, basically, you could just cut through 2 backyards and there's my house. Yeah.
Which I've never thought about it like that, but yeah, we lived in, that's I guess why this movie kind of works for you to be here, is that we lived in a place where people left their doors unlocked. Like we all pretty well knew each other around the neighborhood and things like that. But then, we met there and then we bowled together for a long time.
Yeah. We both belonged to a bowling league in our hometown for several years.
Yeah. I bowled roughly 13 years, I want to say.
Yeah. And I think I stopped bowling probably sophomore year of high school. So it was, it was probably almost a decade.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't worry, guys. Don't worry, audience. I'll ask the question you're all thinking. Were you guys good?
Pretty good, I think.
Derek was always better than me. In bowling, you have a thing called an average. And Derek's average was always higher than mine. And
yeah, I want to say by the end of all of that, my average was around 260.
And I think mine was like 240, 242 was like my average.
But who was the better Halo player?
Oh, me. Oh, me, hands down.
The confidence and quickness of that, no matter what you say, Derek, at this point, I'm going to believe him.
Yeah. But that's funny because Halo is the other thing that we would do of the time. So a big bonding experience there.
I think you can break down our generation of boys into, well, what group of people did you play Halo with? Not did you? It's, well, who with?
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. So very long time then.
Yes.
So I think it's important to mention, though, he specifically said, when was the first time that we met? Derek and I weren't necessarily friends when we first met.
Enemies.
That is true.
So
shit.
for all you listeners that have been enjoying Third Channel Podcast with Derek, and he sounds like this lovable man, do not let the sound fool you.
It doesn't. Nobody's fooled.
Yeah, no, there was a stretch there where I was not a big fan of Bug.
Yeah, I get that.
It was I don't know exactly what it was. I don't know if it was like kind of I already have a little brother and this is like the little brother of my little brother sort of thing. Like he was even younger and I was just kind of annoyed at that time. But like, it's funny to see how far our friendship has then come, because I would consider you one of my closest friends at this point.
Yeah.
And even though we live very far away from each other, we still keep in contact. We still like, you know, I was in your wedding. Like,
Yeah.
Well, and where I know you is, you know, from our episode 0, where we talk about how we got to know each other. A big part of that was work. And that's how we kind of started to get into each other's lives. Well, at that point, like my stories would be about Alistair, your stories would be about a person named Bug. And it's like, I pictured you, to be totally honest, hearing this guy I worked with who's like, yeah, I'm from this place called Wachula. And it's down there where like skaters are bigger than cats. And it's like, oh, Jesus. He never said that. I'm making that. It's impossible to tell because my impression's spot on.
Do we really sound like that?
yeah, sometimes I
No.
do. If I go and visit my parents for more than like a long weekend, I do sound exactly like that.
Yours is worse. Yours
Is it?
Yeah, it's worse.
I get told that sometimes. My wife says that a lot. She's like, I can really hear like your dad's voice coming out in you.
I got to tell you something. If your wife says it, then it's true. But so happy wife, happy. No, if you've got this guy that you work with who is from much deeper south than you are, and they're like, yeah, I have a friend from childhood named Bug. I pictured you like a nipples out and you're wearing like coveralls and one of them's undone and you've got like, no, please don't take your clothes off. And you've got like a reed sticking out of your mouth and a big straw hat. Now that straw hat will obviously come back into our discussion in Laurie Strode's house.
That's true.
In her room. But like that. And, you know, you would do the and that would be you. And then I met you. You came to a show of ours that we were doing a long time ago.
Yeah.
That was the first time we met face to face. But yeah, we've hung out a handful of times over the years. But this has happened just because the three of us, you know, I think there were a few movies that when we all sat down and Derek and I decided that we were going to do this podcast, there were a few movies that we immediately were like, oh, this person's going to be on this one. This person. The first suggestion was we agreed like, oh, when we do really John Carpenter, but if we specifically do Halloween before anything else, that's where we have to have Bug, because that's a shared love of all of ours. Is not only horror, but specifically John Carpenter.
That's another funny thing, because I'm going to ask the question that I try and ask other people of like, what brought you to horror? And your journey, you were not a fan as a kid.
No, I was not.
I think I terrorized you probably for many a year.
Yeah. I mean, when I think back to it, I think the earliest experience I had with horror, you know, I'm pretty sure it was Disney Channel. It was television. I mean, I remember watching, there was a DCOM original, Don't Look Under the Bed. That was one of the first ones I remember seeing that really freaked me out.
Sure.
Also, you know, I've heard you guys mention too, you know, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Another show that I kind of just stumbled upon on TV, and I'm like, whoa, why is this on this channel? But unlike your other guests you've had on, you know, I don't have any siblings, so I didn't really have that like older sibling influence.
Right.
So a lot of it was kind of self-discovery because of Derek.
Yeah, that tends to be the way things go to the people that are immediately adjacent to him.
Yeah, Derek kind of tainted my my pure soul, my pure young soul.
Jesus, I'm realizing something with him telling me this. Derek, you're a piece of shit. You ruin people's lives.
You're probably right.
No, you're the best.
There was there was a time a long time ago. I don't remember how old I was, but Derek had to come stay at our house. I think your parents were on vacation doing something, and you didn't want to go.
Yeah, I either couldn't go or didn't want to go for whatever reason. But yeah, I ended up staying at your house for like probably a week.
I think so. Yeah, it was at least several days, and you had brought a bunch of stuff with you. And one of those was a DVD collection. And it's been mentioned before on this podcast, but it was a DVD. I think it was called like Boogeymen.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We talked about that with Child's Play 2.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
And,
I've still got it. It's over there.
And I distinctly remember he had like put this on. We were in my living room and we put it in the DVD player. And it was just a bunch of just small sections of these, very famous horror films.
Yeah.
But it was just enough for me to like, I'm scared, but I'm also extremely interested.
Right.
These scenes are doing something to me that it was almost like forbidden fruit. Like I shouldn't be watching this. And it only made me like more scared, but yet more intrigued.
Yeah.
And so that kind of started me down this path. And unfortunately, my parents were not big into horror. Like I said, a lot of this was kind of my own volition.
Right.
So the biggest source that I had was TV at the time. So, we were lucky enough at that point, we had cable. And I remember the big channel that I would watch a lot for horror was AMC.
Yeah. Okay.
Especially in October with AMC Fear Fest. So I remember I was one of those kids that had the TV remote. I would go to Nickelodeon, Disney, whatever it was. Boom, I knew that AMC, I think, was channel 37 for me or 36. Boom, go to 37, 36. Parents aren't around, return channel, go right back to it.
The minute they step, you hear them like walking toward your room. You're just like, oh, nope, let's flip to that.
That's right.
Yeah, I was watching SpongeBob. Don't worry, Mom.
So
I was watching the Girls Gone Wild commercials. Leave me alone.
But is that okay? So watching stuff on TV, is that where you then discovered like Halloween, like this franchise in general? Or?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, AMC Fear Fest, the majority, I think it was because there were so many Halloween films. There were certain nights they would play Halloween 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into 5 into 6.
Yeah.
But other nights, I think once those like schedules were done, it would be more random. So one of the things that really intrigued me when I was young and first getting into Halloween, because the Michael Myers character it just intrigued me. There was nothing. It was just a white mask with nothing discernible. The thing had no urgency. It just took its time. It walked.
Yeah.
But what confused me though was that I would watch these movies. I would watch Halloween, the original Halloween, and then like Halloween 4 would come on next.
Right.
And I'm like, why is his mask different?
Right.
Why does he look different? And then Halloween 6 would come on, and now the mask looks entirely different. And this to me was like, I'm not getting it, but I want to know more. I want to know why all of this looks different. And that's what kind of set me down the rabbit hole.
That aesthetic change is hugely important to me too. And it's like, it's usually negative. I approach it negatively because like, I love the way he looks in the first movie. And then it's immediately the second one. It's like, oh, Michael's mask was stung by many bees, and it just looks so strange. And that, I mean, we'll talk about that to death. I think that should inspire as we go through this franchise. We should talk about what the Michael mask looks like in comparison to the first, and also what celebrity it looks like.
Yeah.
The first one, by the way, looks like William Shatner.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So Halloween, the franchise as a whole.
Yeah.
This is one that I actually came to not as late as I came to Child's Play and Chucky, because that, like I said, was just, I mean, maybe 6 years ago.
Right.
And this I saw, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago.
Okay.
For the first time. And then it's become, I mean, obviously it's a staple.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it as much growing up, or didn't watch it growing up in the rest of the franchise because even back then I was somebody who I like to buy the DVD. I like to have the physical, copy of it. And especially a franchise, it's like, oh man, if they have a good box set, I want to buy that box set.
I get that.
So I the old DVD box set of the Nightmare on Elm Street films.
I've said this before on this show, and I'll say it a million more times. If any word is great to describe you as far as your buying habits, you are a completionist.
Yeah. And so having a box set where I can get all of them at one go, that makes me very happy. But for many years, you weren't able to do that with the Halloween films.
Okay.
Licensing issues wouldn't allow them to be all boxed together.
Right. Okay.
And so because of that, I couldn't land on like, oh, well, that's the version that I need to buy right now so that I own them all so I can watch them all. And because I didn't own them all, I didn't watch them all.
This is also
And it took me a while.
before these streaming services were
Exactly.
so varied. Yeah.
Exactly.
Because the answer to in my head immediately was like, well, just fucking put your name in a subscription, you dick. Like, watch it. But yeah, that's impossible at the time. There was a time, ladies and gentlemen, where you had to use the internet or the phone. You couldn't do both.
Now that's a real nightmare for me.
Oh, yeah.
But once I did watch, Halloween has been a staple for a long, several years ever since I've watched it.
Sure.
And then I watched the rest of the franchise finally. And I like different ones for different reasons.
Yeah.
And they're on a pretty good repeat though. Like it's depending on which arc you want to follow. It's an interesting watch. PJ, when's the first time you watched Halloween?
Okay. My story's great. So it's like everything else, super late to the game. This one wasn't one that I watched because of this show. It's not one that I watched because of our friendship or any external personal, like intrapersonal relationship reasons. This I watched because of how absolutely fucking amazing the Halloween house was at Halloween Horror Nights a few years ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
The house was fine. It's fine.
Because you hadn't seen the movie yet?
Right.
Okay.
And so I go, why is this house so fucking popular? Why does it have such high ratings? Why is everyone shitting their fucking pants about it? It really just seems fine. So I went home and I watched the movie that night and I was like, God damn, that house is fucking perfect. But also it was the thing of like, from my expectation, again, what the experience of somebody who only knows about these things through cultural reference is that Halloween was like Friday the 13th, except that it was artistic, that Halloween was the creatively integral version of Friday the 13th because it came first and it was a better vision. That's all I knew. That Michael was like Jason, except he was like scarier, that it was much more serious, that where Friday the 13th was kind of schlocky, Michael wasn't schlocky. And let me tell you fucking people something. That first movie, that is absolutely correct. That second movie, that is mostly correct. Then on out, that is totally fabricated. That makes no fucking sense because I'm watching it with the expectation of this is genre forming, groundbreaking art. And then you get to those later entries into that franchise and you're like, this is worse. This is worse. The fucking later Friday the 13th movies, you can compare them.
At least they're fun.
They
But
are fun.
If they suck, who gives a shit?
Right.
They're not, their reputation is that they are fucking terrible drive-in popcorn movies. Halloween was supposed to be, it's John Carpenter. He's the artist. His shit was great. And then it's like, and I'm under the impression that like Scream, John Carpenter made all of these, but no, these movies, the later ones, kind of drove John Carpenter to stop making movies eventually because they just kept going, make horror. And he was like, let me smoke my cigarettes and play my synthesizer and don't use my name out loud. But what I will say is that this is the first time talking about a movie. We are in one of my, and maybe yours, I don't know, maybe yours. I don't know. Do you have a Letterboxd?
I do.
Okay.
I don't have a lot on it.
Do you
but
want to
I
plug
do.
it?
I will plug it. Should I plug it now or should I plug it later?
Oh, right
plug it
now.
now,
This
yeah.
is your invite.
So I'm on Letterboxd at I'm a 5-star man.
That's brilliant.
I am a 5-star man.
That's good. That's very good. This is, and it may be for you as well. This is on my top 4. Letterboxd lets you pick your 4 favorites, and this movie is on my top 4. I don't know if it's on either of yours.
I have only reviewed 3 movies.
Oh my God.
So you could technically say it is in my top.
Okay, so that's 2 of us. Derek?
It's not in my top 4.
Okay.
I recently changed my top 4. Whenever I first signed into Letterboxd and set up my account, I did it with like 4 of my favorite horror films. And now they are 4 of my favorite films from 4 of my favorite directors.
Gotcha.
But I basically give, even whenever it was all horror films, I was only giving it for 1 film per director.
Gotcha.
And so John Carpenter's The Thing takes that spot for Carpenter instead of Halloween.
Okay. See, I prefer Halloween to The Thing. The Thing is great, but I prefer Halloween to The Thing. I prefer Halloween to most movies, though. I think in my review, I'm like, not only is this one of the most important horror movies, I think it's one of the most important movies of all time. It's so good. It defines the way so many people would then go on to make movies. And we'll talk about all of that. But before we do, my pin, obviously in our intro music, the breathing at the end that we've had this whole time, if you haven't picked that up, that is the breathing of Michael from this movie, Michael Myers. I have a few pieces of housekeeping to go over, and then we can kind of dive in. The first thing of housekeeping is we are in the process of working on some new things.
That is correct.
We are looking to eventually, like right now, this is the verbal equivalent of the clip art of the guy in front of the manhole with the sign that says like work in progress that you go to the 404 website. We are working on getting a website. Where you can also listen to our episodes or link to, maybe
all of our socials and all the other places that you can listen to.
Some info on us, some media, hopefully at some point that we might work on. So we have that in the works. And then the other thing that we're excited about is Bell DeVelco, who made our logo, is taking that logo, and we're going to have merch soon, which is fun. So if you really like the show, or if you're like me from that one cold open from an episode that I can't remember, where you like to wear shirts that are vague that other people might not know about, this is a great opportunity. So we will announce that a little bit more about that stuff as it comes out. But we're super excited about that.
We've seen the mock-ups and they look pretty cool.
Other piece of housekeeping is just to get this out of the way before we start to delve really deep into this franchise. We are focusing on a select group of these movies, of the Halloween movies. Halloween has a lot of entries, but as to A, not suffocate you, and B, kind of stick to our rule of no direct remakes, the movies that we are going over in a row are going to be Halloween's 1, 2, 3, 4, The Return of Michael Myers, Halloween 5, whose subtitle is
Revenge of Michael Myers,
which is like the Revenge of the Sith. And then 6 is the Curse of Michael Myers, which is going to be great. And
it's
then
something.
We are going to also go over H2O and Halloween Resurrection, which is going to be a tough one. And then we're going to, we're not going to cover Rob Zombie's Halloween's 1 and 2. And we are not covering Halloween 2018 Kills or Ends yet. Eventually we will. But that's not part of the major franchise discussion that we're going through right now. That ends with Resurrection.
Yeah. We're going to make you guys wait for that trilogy like, they made us wait.
We're going to make you wait for 40 fucking years.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have a comedy writer write our episodes for us.
It's going to be great.
Yeah. Currently, our episodes are ghost written by somebody who clearly isn't funny. You have any housekeeping?
No, not at all.
Bug, you have any housekeeping? You'd like to say anything to our dozen fans?
Yeah.
Well, shit, you're one of them. You listen sometimes. Anything to say to yourself?
Don't fuck it up.
There it is. Inspirational words said in hindsight exclusively.
The only thing I will say is that as we're recording this, we're going to go ahead. Let's just put the note out there. This one's probably going to be longer than our normal episodes have been because we're all passionate about this one and we're all talkers and it's going to get away from us.
We're passionate. We have a guest. And again, incredibly important movie. So you can expect this episode to be 7 hours long. Buckle in, fuckwads. We begin with the Letterboxd. Remember, we're doing Letterboxd now because IMDb sucks. We're doing the Letterboxd film description. Here we go. The night he came home. 15 years after murdering his sister on Halloween night, 1963, Michael Myers escapes from a mental hospital and returns to the small town of Haddonfield, Illinois, to kill again. That's Letterboxd. It's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Pretty damn good. That's crazy that anybody would give it this, but it looks like there are people on Letterboxd who give it a 1-star review, by the way.
I mean, it's not everybody's cup of tea, I guess.
Yeah.
But
fucking Rich Evans from Red Letter Media put it on a list of all of John Carpenter's movies, put it below vampires.
yeah.
So some people, like Rich Evans, are bad at liking this movie.
Probably because there's not enough jump scares in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what it is. That's what the people really are clamoring for all the time with horror.
They need Michael Myers' mask to be in clown paint and for him to jump out of the shadows at them.
It's funny you say that. Halloween, released October 25th of 1978. Our director, John Carpenter, puts his name right above that title. It's written by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, who was his partner at the time, romantic and business partner.
Partners in love, partners in life.
Correct. Also produced by Deborah Hill. The cinematographer is Dean Cundy. Dean Cundy is... I've talked about, the great Bill Pope. We haven't talked about Deacons on here. We haven't had anything by him yet,
Not yet.
hopefully, but hopefully someday. But Dean Cundy also worked on Halloween 2 and 3.
I love the hopefully someday. You wrote the schedule. If you want to talk about it, just add it to the schedule.
Yeah, you're right. He was also the cinematographer on Psycho 2. He worked with Wes Craven on the TV movie Invitation to Hell. He worked with Bob Zemeckis on a bunch of things: Romancing the Stone, the Back to the Future trilogy, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Death Becomes Her. He worked with Spielberg on Hook and Jurassic Park.
Hey, not in a row, but 2 episodes where we've talked about Hook a little bit.
Yeah, true. And then he reteamed with Carpenter again for The Fog, Escape from New York, The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China. He did 2 episodes of Book of Boba Fett, 3 episodes of Mandalorian, and then he directed a movie called Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves.
What the fuck?
Which is the sequel to Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. He also was the DP of Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, the 3D show that was at Hollywood or at Epcot for decades.
A long time.
Yeah. DP on that.
That's wild.
It is.
And by the way, I understand why you would think Hollywood Studios, because while it was MGM, they had like that little kid play area that was like big celery stalks and shit.
Yeah.
I got mauled to death by a lion-sized ant out there once.
Wow.
Because it's real.
It's
they
good to see
shrink you.
you're doing better now.
Yeah, I got over it.
It's edited by Tommy Lee Wallace, which Tommy Lee Wallace is a name that's all over this movie.
Yeah.
But he worked with Carpenter as the art director for Dark Star and Assault on Precinct 13. He was the editor on The Fog, second unit director for Big Trouble in Little China. And then he's the director, we've mentioned this before, for Halloween 3, Fright Night 2, and Stephen King's It miniseries.
Yes.
The other editor is Charles Bernstein. He's the editor for The Fog, Howling 2, Return of the Living Dead 2, Critters 2, Psycho 4, Tales from the Hood, and Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves.
What the fuck?
It's a weird connection that they worked on, like, 2 people worked on these different franchises.
I said this
same franchise.
I said this last week in Megan. It is to quote Sonny. And as a quick aside, earlier, Bug, while we were talking about doing this, was like, "Hey, how many Always Sunny references are we okay to make?" And it's basically and as many as you want. But we talk about the fact that for some reason, in these movies, all of the production staff are all linked in this weird Pepe Sylvia whiteboard graph.
Yes,
it's bizarre.
It's like my favorite thing, though.
It is, yeah.
The budget for this film. This is an independent film.
Okay. Indie film.
How much do you think it might be? You have nothing to go off of.
I have nothing to go off of. Let me ask you, is it in the millions?
No.
Okay. I didn't think it would be. Is it in the hundreds of thousands?
Yes.
Okay. I am going to guess below 500,000. I'm going to guess above 300,000. I'm going to put it at $350,000. That's my guess.
That's pretty close.
You are extremely close.
Yeah. The range that I have is 300,000. And then I think that number got bumped up closer to 325.
Okay.
Because whenever they brought on Donald Pleasance, from what I've read.
Oh my God, did I kind of get it right?
You kind of got it
right.
right.
The first time?
Yeah.
I quit the podcast.
Oh God.
I'm on top. I gotta leave.
Bug, did you want to co-host? I don't know what to do at this point.
I guess I'll step it up.
I'm taking a lot of this equipment with me though.
Oh God.
You're gonna have to record it on your phones.
Okay, let me plug this in. Hold on.
The new Apple, like the new iPhone commercial is just a clip of y'all trying to record the podcast, but it's really shitty and it's immediately infighting. And then it's like, shot on iPhone. Don't pitch this.
No, it was funny. During both of our rewatches, I was trying so hard not to bring up the budget to Derek.
I'm glad.
Because I knew this was part of the show. And I'm like, I can't say it. I can't say it. I can't bring it up.
I love and hate the budget game.
What about the box office game?
We don't do that.
Yeah, no, we don't. But this one brought in a ton of money. $70 million.
Jesus Christ.
On a 300,000.
That has to be the biggest return that we'll go over. At least in the top three.
For a long time.
It was
nuts.
for a very long time.
When we get to things like Blair Witch Project or Paranormal Activity, those
fair.
might eke that out just a bit.
Okay, well, Paranormal Activity probably cost $20 to make.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
But it does make it one of the most profitable independent films of all time.
Yeah, Jesus.
We've talked about our director a little bit. We've mentioned him tons in these episodes.
Yeah.
Even though this is the first thing that we're covering of his.
Well, and we're going to cover him so much more than we would typically cover any other director.
Yeah. His first film was Dark Star, which is a sci-fi horror.
Yeah.
Almost an alien ripoff.
Yeah. Slightly comedy.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Assault on Precinct 13, which you and I have watched together, PJ.
Yes, we have. Closest thing to a zombie movie I'll watch.
Yeah. Pretty much.
That's the criticism with that movie is just make it a zombie movie, you fucking cowards.
At this point. The Fog, Escape from New York, The Thing, Christine, Starman, Big Trouble in Little China, Prince of Darkness, They Live, another favorite of yours.
Yes.
Memoirs of an Invisible Man, which is one that I have not watched yet.
I read, and because we're never going to talk about that movie. So if we have a chance to talk about it, it's right now. I read like yesterday because your phone listens to you, and I've been talking about Halloween a lot in the last week, so now it's giving me shit. Apparently, Memoirs of an Invisible Man. Chevy Chase almost made John Carpenter just stop making movies. Period.
Yeah,
like he is on the record of being like that guy is insane. It's not news that Chevy Chase is a insufferable prick, but he was like, no, he's made me hate making movies now. So
who'd you hear that from? Bill Murray?
No, I heard that from Facebook.
Well, then it's got to be true. He also directed In the Mouth of Madness, Village of the Damned, Escape from L.A., Vampires, Ghosts of Mars, and The Ward.
And if we ever go over In the Mouth of Madness, that will also be a movie on my Letterboxd top 4. That is one of my favorite. That is my favorite Carpenter movie. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. And I have
trippy.
no idea why.
Yeah, and that was one that you watched before I did.
Yeah, I just... something about the apocalypse shit, like that version, that sort of Cthulhu, very madness awakens in the center of the earth. I love storytelling.
Very
like that.
visually surreal.
Yeah. Plus Sam Neill's just fucking great.
Oh, absolutely. Our writer-producer of Deborah Hill, like I said, the partner of John Carpenter for many, many years. She was the writer-producer for The Fog, Escape from New York. She worked on Halloween 2 and 3. Cronenberg's The Dead Zone. Clue.
That's a Carly favorite. That's a Carly top 4.
I love that movie. Adventures in Babysitting, Big Top Pee-wee, which is a sequel to Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And then she was also a producer on the 2005 Fog remake.
Oh, okay.
And she was the executive producer and writer for Escape from LA.
Okay.
So she's worked on a ton of stuff with Carpenter, obviously, both when they were together and when they weren't. But basically where this movie came from is after viewing Carpenter's film Assault on Precinct 13 at the Milan Film Festival, an independent film producer, Erwin Ebloms, I believe is how it's pronounced. It's how they kind of said it on the commentary. And a financier, Mustafa Akkad.
Yep, Mustafa
Am I pronouncing
Akkad.
that right? Bug is here to fact check me on this.
Gotcha. Before we move too far down into this discussion, what is the name of the film festival?
Milan Film Festival.
Are we trying to do a funny name for that? Are we trying to reawaken that bit?
No, we can. Go ahead.
The Spice Melange Film Festival.
Oh, I love that.
Okay, there it is.
I'm glad we didn't skip
Remember,
that.
the Third Channel podcast makes fun of film festivals because we are comedically bankrupt. Derek, please continue.
But Irwin and Mustafa, they basically asked Carpenter to direct a film for them about a psychotic killer that stalked babysitters. That was the basic idea. Mm-hmm. And he agreed to direct the film if he had full creative control, was paid $10,000 for his work. That work included writing, directing, scoring the film. He wanted his name above the title. And then he also wanted to retain rights to 10% of the film's profits.
Oh, no.
I honestly don't know if he got the $10,000, but he did retain those rights. So he made a bunch of money.
Yes.
Deborah Hill also got those, like 10% of those rights. So she made a bunch of money.
That's like, is that in perpetuity? Because if that's for the franchise.
Oh, he's still cashing those checks.
Jesus Christ.
Good for him.
Yes. You old corpse looking man.
He's looked like that for so long.
John Carpenter has looked dead since he was born.
Carpenter and Hill, they drafted the story of Halloween. Now, there were claims that the film, when you read different sources on different sites, they give you all sorts of different stories. And so at different points, they say that the movie was supposed to be called The Babysitter Murders. But then Eblums has debunked this, but I don't know what's true.
Sure.
But it is a title that gets kicked around.
Sure.
And I like to think that it was that.
Yeah.
It was
makes
very,
sense.
Very generic of a mass killer stalking babysitters. But what really interested Carpenter was whenever they decided to set it on Halloween. And that basically there hadn't been, and this isn't exactly true, there had been horror films, smaller horror films that take place on Halloween, but nothing this major had been done before and really like takes it in as the theme of the film. Now, film director Bob Clark, who, if you remember, directed Porky's and also Black Christmas.
How long have you been waiting to do that today?
No, I thought of that right then.
That's really good.
So-
He also directed, of course, A Christmas Story,
Yeah, he did.
which is so... I will live 1,000 years and that'll never make sense to me. But yeah, Bob Clark.
He had suggested, he had talked with Carpenter in his time making that. Carpenter had asked him afterwards, which was like, if you were ever going to do a sequel for Black Christmas, what would you do? And Bob is like, I don't want to do horror films anymore. I want to get out of this. That's not what I signed on to be a director for. But if I were to do one, it would be the next year. The guy, Billy, would have been caught, but he escapes from the asylum, the institution, goes back to the house, and the killings would start all over again. But it would take place on Halloween. So some people have said, oh, well, then John Carpenter just stole that idea. But Bob Clark has said, no. Yes, that conversation may have happened, but John did not copy Black Christmas. He wrote, he directed, he made that movie his own. It was his own idea.
If you're going to say that killing people on a psychopath killing people on a specific date means that you're copying Black Christmas, then welcome to Black Christmas Knockoffs Discussion, the podcast.
Yeah, pretty much. The writing process took 10 days for the screenplay. The producers, or not the producers, but Eblums and Akkad, I guess the executive producers more than anything.
Yeah.
The money men.
Yeah. They left most of the creative control to Carpenter and Hill. The main thing that Eblums wanted was he wanted the movie to be written like a radio play so that there would be like a scare every 10 minutes.
Oh.
I don't know if that... I mean, would you think that really happens in the movie? Like, I don't sit there and clock it myself.
I would say that there is something that advances the danger, the suspense every 10 minutes. There is a detail, some factoid. There is something that happens every like 10, 20 minutes that at a decent, healthy pulse that keeps it moving forward. But I wouldn't say there's a scare every 10 minutes.
Right. You get little things like when Sheriff Brackett shows up for the first time,
Yeah.
like that catches, Laurie off guard.
Them rounding the corner and him being behind the hedgerow. Little things like that. But I think the only thing that we get that rapidity is like just something that is ominous, something that's like a score change or something that kind of moves it along.
Yeah.
Something that kind of sets this apart from other horror films, especially today, is that this film, it really takes its time in the beginning, and it really tries to establish that suburbia, that neighborhood. So yeah, you don't get the immediate kind of tense scares every 10 minutes because it's trying to lay that groundwork for this is where the story is going to take place.
You have no background extras. You have nobody shouting or no machinery. You don't have a town. You have a neighborhood. And so, yeah, it is. They're walking. The girls are walking, and it's the only sound you hear is wind in the trees and their voices. And so, yeah, no, you're right, because I have a hard time thinking of anything made in any genre in the last 10 years that kind of focuses that like granularly on one setting. So, yeah, no, I mean, it's in that regard. No, I don't think that that's inaccurate. We just spent 5 minutes to answer that one yes or no question, but no, I don't think so.
Perfect. That's what the show is.
Cut, print.
Deborah Hill has said that the script took them then 3 weeks to write. Much of the inspiration was based on like the Celtic traditions of Halloween, such as the festival of Samhain, which is spelled Sam Hain for anyone who's reading this podcast. And said that, Halloween was the night where all of the souls are left to wreak havoc on the living. And so they had come up with the idea of a story about like the most evil kid who had ever lived. And John had also visited an institution, a mental institution, if I'm not mistaken. He had come in contact with a child who was just much like Loomis describes Michael, just
severely schizophrenic.
Yes. Would not answer, would not respond to anything. And when you looked into his eyes, there was just nothing. There was nothing there.
And he was like, it was the scariest thing I ever saw.
And so he puts that into the story. Hill had been a babysitter growing up as well. So during her teenage years, she wrote from that experience then. She wrote most of the female characters' dialogue, while Carpenter drafted all of Loomis's speeches based off of the things that he had seen. A lot of the script details were also drawn from their own backgrounds. Haddonfield was where Deborah Hill grew up. Haddonfield,
New Jersey.
Yeah, New Jersey. Thank you.
So obviously right down the road from one Charles Lee Ray.
Yeah.
From Hack and Sack.
They were probably neighbors. But it's a good thing he moved to Chicago shortly thereafter.
Hold on, though, because Charles Lee Ray moves from Hackensack, New Jersey to Chicago, Illinois.
Ooh.
And it's Haddonfield, New Jersey goes to Haddonfield, Illinois. Is this Chucky? Is Michael just Chucky? We ripped this wide open, guys. Conspiracy theories abound.
When it came to casting, I don't know if PJ knows this. Dr. Loomis, who is played, of course, by Donald Pleasance, who we love.
The OG, the GOAT. We're going to talk about him. He is the best part of the franchise, hands down.
Oh, yeah. Like solidly, yeah.
Yeah.
But originally, he was intended to be played by Peter Cushing.
Oh, I wonder how that would have been. I love Peter Cushing so much.
And the other option was Christopher Lee. Because Carpenter obviously is a big fan of Hammer horror.
Can I be totally honest?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so fans of this podcast will know I love Lord of the Rings. Fans of this podcast will also know I really fucking love Saruman. Like, part of the reason I love Lord of the Rings is because I have such a profound love for Christopher Lee and for Saruman. And I mean, Peter Cushing's great. Everything that he's in, he's great. He has the funniest gag of any movie made by the Zucker brothers in Top Secret. And it's a weird little thing, but I love Peter Cushing as well for a lot of that reason. I kind of think Donald Pleasance is still the best answer.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it with the other two. I think it would have they would have too much like providence, like too much gravitas. I don't think that they could do what Pleasance does in this movie.
No, I agree. I can't see it as anybody else. They eventually suggested Donald Pleasance. He agreed strictly because his daughter was in a rock band, and she had been a fan of Carpenter's score for Assault on Precinct 13. And he was paid either $20,000 or $25,000 for his 5 days of work on this film.
That's a really good return at the time.
Yeah, so the original budget was $300,000. When they were trying to get Donald Pleasance for the role, they went back to Mustafa and they were like, "We need $20,000 more for Donald Pleasance." So that's why the budget went from $300 to $320.
Donald Pleasance was like, I need 25,000. My family needs to eat.
That's a really good plan.
I just think of everything he says in his life. Everything. He wakes up in the morning, he's like, the birds are outside, they're singing, everything.
He's at 100 all the time.
It's the best. No. He is either at 100 or he is at 2.
Right.
That's not 200. The number 2. It's either like, Michael was a little boy and he was very scary. Or he's like, he's going to kill us all. He's gone. It's amazing.
Jamie Lee Curtis was not the first choice to play Laurie.
Okay.
He says on the commentary. So the commentary that Bug, you watched this as well, right?
Yes.
It's on the Shout Factory. Their collection has this commentary.
Yeah, the new Shout Factory.
It was
4K.
it was a newer one. It was a more recent one with him and Jamie Lee Curtis.
Right.
John Carpenter.
Which, I mean, listening to Jamie Lee Curtis talk about anything that she's ever been in, she is the most excitable, just so happy to talk about the things that she has done and the work that all of the people around her have done on these things.
Yeah.
She's very, very excited. But they said that they originally wanted Anne Lockhart, who was the daughter of June Lockhart from Lassie, like the old TV show, to play. Not an actor I'm really aware of, but she had commitments to other films at the time. So Jamie Lee Hill had learned of her and that she is the daughter of Psycho actress Janet Leigh.
Yes.
So they thought it was fitting that if they could get the daughter of, the actress from Psycho to be in, which is Psycho at the time was kind of the, like, not a slasher film, but like the proto slasher film. Like it is kind of, when you look back at the history of the slasher film, and we talked about this with Scream, is it almost spurs from Psycho.
Yeah.
So to get her daughter would just be like the perfect cast, which I think it is.
Yeah, I agree.
Which will not be the last reference to Psycho.
No. I'll let you point those out as we go along. Because I'm sure I've got them in my notes, but they're probably lost somewhere.
Because how many pages of notes are there?
At least 2. Curtis was cast in the part of Laurie. It was her first leading role in anything. She'd done a couple TV roles, worked with her mother on a couple things. She initially was kind of had reservations about the whole thing because the character that she was being asked to play, she didn't feel she identified with. She felt more like Linda, more kind of carefree, whereas, Laurie is more bookish and shy. Mm-hmm. Now, the role of the Shape, or Michael Myers, if you will, played by several different people, but the one that I'm going to talk about most is Nick Castle.
Yeah.
Nick Castle, he was a friend of John Carpenter. They attended the University of Southern California together. They were in a band together.
Yeah.
They, along with Tommy Wallace, which is why Tommy Wallace he does everything in this movie.
Yeah. All of the creative production staff of this movie was in a band with John Carpenter.
Yes. A band called the Coupe de Villes.
Yeah.
You actually hear them at one point during the film, whenever they get in one of the cars with Laurie and Annie.
And you know what? They're all right.
Yeah.
They're just fine.
But Nick Castle, what's funny is Nick Castle wasn't cast as the Shape. He was just a buddy of Carpenter, was hanging out on set, wanted to see what his friend was doing. Mm-hmm. And then John was like, hey, throw on this blue outfit, put on this white mask and walk from point A to point B and hold that knife. And that was pretty much it. That's how he got the job. And he just is the physical performance through most of the movie.
Yeah.
There is a couple other people who kind of play different parts of Michael. Tony Moran, he plays the unmasked Michael at the end of the film. But Nick Castle was apparently paid about $25 a day for his performance.
Okay.
Moran was a struggling actor before he got this role, and he was paid $250 for his appearance. So for his one, 2, maybe not even a full minute on screen performance, he gets $250. I don't know if that's fair or not, but
Nick Castle would have had to have worked 100 days.
Yeah, which this was shot in much less than that.
No, hold on. 10 days. You're good at math.
10 days.
I'm so bad at math.
Yeah, I believe part of the reason that John was able to get this gig was when he went to Mustafa Akkad, he said, I can get this done in 5 weeks. And he said, say less.
And he said, done in 5 weeks. And he said, say less again. So Carpenter said 5 weeks. And he said a little bit less. He said 5 week? He's like, you got the job.
So yeah, this production was really John, Deborah, Tommy, and a lot of their friends.
Yeah.
Over 5 weeks. It's a very, I guess you'd call it kind of a guerrilla shoot.
Mm-hmm.
It was very rough, fast. Yeah.
Well, and it's like everybody kind of had to pitch in and do, a little bit of everything. And because of the low budget, like Tommy Lee Wallace, he was, among other things, he was tasked with creating the Michael Myers mask, who he initially went and found 2 different masks. This is what I was going to kind of referencing whenever you mentioned a clown, because the first of his 2 options for what Michael might have looked like was a Don Post Emmett Kelly smiling clown mask. Emmett Kelly is like a famous clown or clown artist. And so they had put like frizzy red hair on it. They tested that out and it appeared, quote, very demented and creepy. The other option for a mask was a 1975 Captain James T. Kirk mask that was purchased in a costume shop on Hollywood Boulevard. It cost them $1.98.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you may not realize if you're not familiar with the backstory of this film and where that mask comes from, you're probably saying, well, it doesn't look like, William Shatner. That's because they ripped the eyebrows off, the sideburns off. They painted the face, a very kind of bluish white, spray painted the hair brown, and they cut like the eyes open a bit wider to give it, change it just enough.
In the world of Halloween, and this is something that I've always wondered as we begin one of 1,000 conversations about this mask. In the context of this movie, what would that mask have been?
Oh, I get what you mean.
Like, what kid is buying that? What is the costume?
Because
I'm creepy, albino face. It's like, what is that?
Because it's like, much like in Scream, the ghost face mask existed within the universe of the film.
Right.
It was Father Death or whatever they called it.
Right.
But yeah, it's like, well, it's not a Shatner mask in Haddonfield.
Right. Because the thing is that the ghost face mask, you can wear that because it's like that. Well, that's just a spooky face. It's like, and it comes with the robe and everything. But like, who's going out there and buying like, well, this mask makes me look like a man, possibly named Chet. Perfect. That's my costume. It's just so, I think about that all the time.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Maybe kids were buying them to pretend to be men to get into the theater for
Vincent
the older movies.
Adult men. Yeah.
Oh yeah. You buy it with a big trench coat. After testing out that mask, the crew decided that it was more creepy because it was emotionless.
Yeah.
So thankfully that's the one they went with.
Yeah.
do you think that that's why they have Michael, spoilers, for the very opening scene of this movie, dressed as a clown in the open, like to kind of pay homage to like, well, the other option was a clown mask?
Maybe, but I also think they're just setting up the theme of Michael wearing a mask. Because if you notice, that's kind of when he puts that mask on, that's when the violence begins.
Yeah.
I do think it's probably column A, column B, because if they need a costume for the child to wear, it makes sense that they do a clown, because it's like, well, we were going to do that for the adult, but we might as well do it for the kid. But yeah, I noticed that as well. And we'll get more into this, obviously, in the actual review. But it's like, even when Michael, you know what? Okay, right from the jump, this movie has been out for decades. It is one of the most historically relevant horror films of all time. If you need a spoiler warning for this, why is this what you're listening to?
Yeah.
That makes no sense. So if you need a spoiler warning, fuck you. You're not getting one. Eventually, adult Michael in, killing Lori, attempting to, is unmasked, and he will not attack her anymore until his mask is back on.
Yeah.
It's like they don't talk about it. It's not specified. It's not something they spend any like plot on, but yeah, he seems to need it. So I think I agree with you. I've always thought that. I think it sets that up pretty well.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful point. PJ had said something about like how long he would have had to shoot to make $250.
And I was very wrong.
Halloween was filmed in 20 days over a 4-week period in May of 1978, which of course is why them shooting in May of the year in California, it doesn't look like Halloween. It doesn't look like fall. It doesn't look like
PJ, are there usually autumn leaves in May? To the best of your knowledge?
Where? Because Cabo, no. In Illinois, also no. Because by the end of October, it's snowy and like you're in Illinois. You're in the fucking Midwest. Okay. For the sake of visual, yeah. You'd expect it to be, like brown leaves on the ground, like brown, red leaves. And, maybe people, you could see people's breath, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Especially at night. It's chilly.
Yeah. Not a brisk and balmy 90 degrees.
Yeah. So much that they needed to then, and I'm sure we'll talk more about the leaves, but they had to buy leaves, like fake leaves from like a decoration store, like maybe a Michael's or something, like decorative leaves, paint them brown, and then scatter them on the lots that they were using.
How funny would it fucking have been? Just hear me out. How funny would it have fucking been? They take the trash bag of their, $20 worth of paint and fake leaves, right? And they scatter them in the yard and they're filming, because they're filming in a real neighborhood. And then like old man Carruthers comes out of his house with a leaf blower and blows them away. And they're like, no, we got to go back and get more money for our film because of these leaves.
I mean, or even just during the filming. I mean, there's several scenes where the wind picks up.
Yeah.
I mean,
could you imagine production assistants just having to like run down the street to go grab the leaves they've bought and painted?
But I mean, I'm sure that's what happened.
To answer your question, I can picture that. I shouldn't have to. Right. I think that's the point.
But yeah, that is, just imagine they're having to bag those up after each setup of a scene and move them to the next yard that they're going to walk past.
Hey, man, they're in Illinois.
Yeah,
okay,
they're absolutely there.
That's where they are.
Now, what I love about this movie is much of it was the filming was completed with the Panaglide system, which was a clone of Steadicam, but produced by Panavision. It was at the time, very new camera system, and it allowed the filmmakers to move around a space very smoothly. Steadicam at this point, we all know what that means or have an idea of it.
You get a lot of obvious examples of how well that works in this movie.
Yes. And the Panaglide was mostly operated by Raymond Stella. That is Ray Stella, I believe is how he's credited in the end there. But does a fantastic job. It allowed for a lot of moving shots that mimicked a person's point of view, which is very important for something like this, because like we talked about with Scream and the slasher films, one of the major things there is the killer's point of view. And we play a lot with that. They played a lot with that with in Black Christmas as well.
Yes.
When are we, from the killer's point of view, when is this just our point of view as the viewer, and what does that look like? How does it change?
How the fuck are we getting up this lattice?
Yeah. But apparently half of the $300,000 budget was spent just on that Panavision camera and Panaglide system. Now, this may be something that our listeners don't necessarily know, but a lot of times films are not shot in like chronological order.
Yeah.
In fact, in this one, the opening sequence is shot at the end.
Right.
The Myers house was an actual abandoned house that they found, and they used for the main stretch of the movie. No sort of set dressing or anything. The broken windows, the peeled, paint and everything like that. That's just how that house looked, apparently.
Yeah.
And then for the opening sequence, they had to, at the end of the shoot, completely whitewash the walls, paint everything, wallpaper, bring furniture in, completely dress that set to then shoot for like a couple of days and get that one long shot. And that was it. And then they had to basically return it back to how it looked whenever they got there.
So that's the question. You know how in Interstellar, Nolan was like, no CG, plan all that fucking
Plan it
corn.
all. Yeah.
And then they made billions of dollars in corn sales. Why didn't Carpenter just sell the house?
I don't know.
He already fixed it up.
I don't know if they bought it is the thing. I think a church owned it, if I'm not mistaken. It was just a property that was owned.
Listen. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Our stuff is in the house. It's ours. We're selling it. They could have sold it back to the production, and then they shot another movie there.
But because things are not shot in chronological order, Carpenter then had to kind of come up with a system of different levels of terror to give to Jamie Lee Curtis, especially because it's, she's the one that's kind of going through the roller coaster of calm to questioning, am I being followed?
Right.
Is this guy out to get me? Oh, I'm probably imagining things, to like, nope, something is actually going wrong. And then, more and more frightened as she goes. So it was a fear meter that he would be able to give her a number system of like, this scene you're about at a 7, or this one you're at a 6. Yesterday we were working on something, you were only at a 4, but today needs to be like a 9. And so that helped her to kind of think through how scared she needed to be acting.
Yeah, I think that's to shoot out of order. I think that's super effective.
Yes, I think it's, to put a numerical value on something like that,
right,
could really help an actor. Now, Nick Castle, on the other hand, he didn't get much direction at all besides
big and scary.
Basically, move from mark on floor to other mark on floor in as plain a way as you can, showing no emotion.
Wear a mask.
Yeah.
Go here. There.
The acting method was to not act.
Right. Yeah, because it's like he's just you had said this before. It's like he's just a force of nature. He's not supposed to have much of a character, even though I think as we watch this, it's like, no, you pick up on like little character things that he's doing, whether they want to kind of draw attention to those or not. The main piece of direction that John Carpenter gave was during the section where Michael murders Bob in the kitchen. And after he has him, stabbed to the wall, Michael tilts his head in a very inquisitive kind of look. And what did they say on the commentary for that?
John said he wanted it to appear as if he was looking at a dead butterfly.
Yeah, like a butterfly like pinned in a collection.
Pinned in your collection, yeah.
Okay, that's creepy as hell.
Yeah. Carpenter, part of his agreement was that he got to score the film. That's one of the things that he also loves to do. Apparently, he loves it so much now that that's all he wants to do is just make music with his kids, which is great.
And video games.
He does love to play video games.
Apparently, he's making one.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I had this in my notes. I was going to save this, but this is the perfect time. Apparently, he is with some studio, and I don't know which one, but apparently using Unreal Engine, the newest Unreal Engine, he is working on he is a producer of a video game. He's like creative director.
Interesting.
For a Halloween video game.
Huh.
After all these years, he's finally getting what he wanted.
To make the story that he wanted to tell one time again for more money.
But as he was working on the score, basically, part of the reason that he wanted to do the score, they had done a test screening and with no score, because a lot of times that's what you kind of, you put out this film, you show it to executives, whatever, you show it to test audiences, and it was quote unquote was not scary. And so he then worked on that score over a few days. It said it took him 3 days to compose and record the entire score for this film.
Jesus Christ.
And he utilized more traditional, like symphonic instrumentation for this. And we were talking about this earlier. Mainly played on piano, and it was played in a 10/8 or a 5/4 time signature. Is that what it's?
And I think, PJ, I was asking you, most people are used to a 4/4 time.
Very basically, almost every song that you listen to, it's beats and measures. And a measure is when the music that you're listening to naturally repeats tonally what the signature is. And then beats are how many beats are in that measure. So a 4/4 song is 4 beats to every measure, of which there are 4 before the next measure begins. So a 5/4 time signature is irregular. It is odd enough that it feels like I think the reason he would have done this is that feels foreign to the ear enough that you become a little
uneasy.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. And of course, it's one of those things where it's kind of like Jaws, where the score kind of sets the mood of the movie in a completely different light now.
Yeah.
And it drives the scary moments ahead.
Well, that's what pisses me off so fucking bad about these people that are legendary who make this immaculate, near perfect shit is like, and it took 3 days for John Carpenter to score. And it's like, it took him 3 days to make something that would last for the rest of humankind, unless we nuke ourselves, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Then fallout happens.
Because honestly, the Halloween theme has become like, people just know that
It's
without having
ubiquitous.
seen the movie.
You can't get away from it.
Right.
It's the Halloween theme. It's Michael Jackson's Thriller, and it's Tubular Bells from The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Those are the 3, like, that's what it is.
Well, and it's also pretty neat too that the score is also there are themes that are made in the score for certain characters,
right?
Certain things playing out on screen, and some of those themes are repeated, but just with slightly different variation.
Yeah.
So I can see how maybe he did make it in 3 days because some of that stuff is repeated. But again, there's just a slight difference when it's repeated.
It's like knowing when to, and we'll go over the score, I'm sure. We do this every episode, by the way. Every episode, we start to say something like, we'll do it later. We'll do it later. But knowing when to do like the bump, that like the shape lurks or whatever. I don't remember the name of that track, but it's him hunting, right?
Yeah.
Knowing when to do that fast and high and knowing when to do that low and slow. And it's just like, it is, again, the things that make the movies that we talk about noteworthy, that last forever, that become 5-star men are, do they have a vision and do they get to make that vision? Because sometimes they have a vision and it's fucking terrible.
Right.
But other times that vision counts. And I think this is a great example of that.
Right. Luckily, yeah, Halloween is one that it hits everything pretty much perfectly. It has popularized many of the tropes that, from the slasher genre. Like, this is what people consider the first slasher movie, like truly in its perfect form. We had movies before this that were quote unquote proto slashers. We've talked about them. We've mentioned them before. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Black Christmas. Those are both from 1974. You have things like Peeping Tom and Psycho from 1960. So these sorts of ideas had been around. They used elements involving teenagers being murdered by strangers, whether or not masked or unmasked. The final girl trope is definitely brought up in this. But Halloween is definitely considered by, film historians as being responsible for not only kind of solidifying these things, but kind of bringing some new ones in as well that then would lead on to what a slasher film is then made of. Killing off of characters who are substance abusers, meaning they drink or they smoke or they do drugs. If they are promiscuous, sexually, they are typically killed off.
It's a lot of, this movie is a lot of where we see the birth of the cabin in the woods trope. The rules that Cabin in the Woods follows.
Yes.
We see a lot of those rules kind of, come out of their, hatch out of their egg here.
Mm-hmm. Also, the use of like a theme, like in the score for the killer, a sound effect, audio sting, and then also using POV from the killer's point of view with your camera movements. And not only did it spawn a franchise that is now 13, as we record this, 13 films deep. Yeah. But also responsible for a whole new wave of horror films, of slasher films, because of everything that it pioneered.
Yeah.
Like you said, PJ, off the top, it is the most important horror film probably of all time, and one of the most important films of all time.
It is so important. And obviously with slasher movies, specifically in horror, this really does the work of establishing like the reason this movie exists, the reason you should be afraid of this is it centers around not so much a character or a person. It is like a force, something driving the plot forward that has zero humanity.
I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding, and even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
What do we do?
He's been here once tonight. I think he'll come back. I'm going to wait for him.
I still think I should notify the radio and television.
No. If you do that, they'll see him on every street corner. They'll look for him in every house. Just tell your men to keep their mouths shut and their eyes open.
I am so excited to talk about this. Stupid fucking beautiful movie. I'm so fucking excited. It's not stupid. I just like to be, derogatory. I know that we all love this movie so much. This movie really changed the way that I responded to a lot of this stuff. It was always kind of like an experiment for me. It was always how much of this stuff can I really imbibe before I'm full? How saturated can I get with any of this stuff? And I think this movie was like the first sign of like, no, if there is enough of a creative force behind it, you can take in anything. It showed me that this is an art form. It's not a way to sell movie tickets. It's not a way to, sell merchandise or whatever. It is a way to tell a story in a more expressive way with just, instead of, Disney movies and classic tales will tickle parts of your brains. The part of your brain that wants to be brave, the part of your brain that wants to be in love, the part of your brain that enjoys peace and harmony or adventure, or even like, Lord of the Rings, those characters. God, I need to stop talking about that fucking series on this show. But nerd, shut the fuck up. They want to be, they go on an adventure and they have tribulations and obstacles and they overpower them and they come out on top and they win. And this is just a different part. It's what happens when you don't win. You live a life in comfort. Now, as humanity has moved past being prey, it's like, well, what would it be like? And we can experiment with that. But all of that to say, it is also still a really good way to sell merch. And I have so much fucking stuff from this series. I've got Michael's mask. I have like that stupid little, like the perfect replica of his knife for some fucking reason. I don't know why I bought that. I've got I have a 6-scale figure of Michael that in celebration of doing this, I bought today. Yep. I have, a gift for my birthday, a year prior, Carly got me from Trick or Treat Studios, the board game.
Yeah.
What is that like?
It is so very basically, the board game. And if you don't have it, you should look at it. They sell it at Barnes and Noble. They sell it. Our local comic shop, Emerald City Comics, had it, which we are pitching officially right now because I got this board game there and I got the figure there. So Emerald City Comics, go check them out. All that to say, the way the game works is you have a group of people. We played with 4 people, and it was our friend Dylan, Alistair, and Derek were the survivors. And I played Michael. And they had a game board with their pieces, and they would move them around and run around and whatnot and try to survive while investigating clues to find car keys and the kids so that the survivors, can take the kids and get the fuck out of Haddonfield, right?
Wow, okay.
I played Michael, and I have a different game board. They don't see where I am, but I know where they are, and they can't find me unless they're characters that then they have line of sight. If they look at you, you have to put your piece on the board and they now know where you are, but you stalk them. And this is such an effective medium. It's so good at storytelling, and Halloween specifically is so fucking good at it that this stupid board game that we're playing in my living room, they were like, no, this is stressful.
We're sitting in here with the lights on. It is bright, and we are like screaming at each other of like, I don't know where he could be. He was just here. He's not any longer. I don't know where he is, man. And it created actual tension. It created actual like, I don't want to go back in that house because he could now be anywhere in there.
Right.
I could step through a door and boom, I'm dead.
And the reason I spent the time talking about that board game, which again, you should play it and we should play it. I think
we should play.
But the reason I bring that up is because this movie, more than any movie I think I've ever seen, sets up you don't know when you're being watched. And you also don't know why. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an effective part of the storytelling here is that there's never a reason given. And, all of that it all starts with like the flashback in the beginning. And the flashbacks usually give a bit of evidence as to why somebody would be from a storytelling perspective, in my experience, a flashback is a way to assimilate the audience with part of the history of why the current story is happening. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't explain why. No. It sets up the mystery that we then still don't have an answer for by the end. At least, not given in this movie besides, Loomis says it. He is evil. Yeah. He is evil incarnate. Mm-hmm. And there is nothing that's going to stop him from doing what he sees fit. Yeah. The movie itself starts with that theme. Yeah. The Halloween theme and these beautiful opening credit sequence. Mm-hmm. The titles themselves are to the right side of the screen, a little odd, mm-hmm. but it's because there's this beautifully carved jack-o'-lantern on the left side of the screen that we are moving closer to. And much like the Michael Myers mask itself, Tommy Lee Wallace was the one who actually carved that jack-o'-lantern for the credits. It's a bizarre little movement that we're doing. It's just a steady push in on this, but they describe in the commentary.
Yeah, it's like they said it was a pitch black warehouse where they filmed some other scenes, and it is just a slow dolly shot that closes in on this pumpkin.
Which is interesting. I mean, I guess it's because you're not seeing like focal length doesn't change because they're not zooming in on it. It's they're physically moving the camera. They're trucking the camera up to it. Mm-hmm. But it gives it kind of a floaty feel to it.
I think this is also the most, when you think of the John Carpenter font, mm-hmm. this is how I see it. In the orange and very much this against that black grain. That's what I think. And he used that fucking font for like 90% of the movies that he makes. Yeah. But yeah.
It's synonymous with him.
Yep.
My one gripe about this opening, and it probably doesn't bother anyone else, but we push all the way in on the eye and like nose of this jack-o'-lantern until we get to Deborah Hill's credit. Mm-hmm. And then as we go to the John Carpenter, directed by John Carpenter, the jack-o'-lantern goes away. It clicks to black.
Right.
But then John Carpenter's title is still over on the right. It's not then
it wouldn't center, yeah.
And I don't know. It annoys me.
I thought you were going to say is a lot of people's pet peeve, which is the nose of the jack-o'-lantern is there's a cut and it connects to the mouth of the jack-o'-lantern. Mm-hmm. And this may be stupid, but I always assumed that was because it looks kind of like a kitchen knife. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's why. It might also just be an honest fuck up, but I tell you what, it's iconic.
It may have been, hey, this was our last pumpkin. And I kind of messed it up, but we can't afford to import more pumpkins to the set.
I think they only had 3 to 6 pumpkins for this entire thing, like actual pumpkins that they could use for this movie.
And we did, and we tried to count all the pumpkins that are used in this movie.
They should have just fucking painted watermelons.
They painted certain gourds. They would buy green gourds and paint them orange. For further away pumpkins, there's a scene whenever the kids are walking out of the school. Before Tommy has his giant pumpkin that he's carrying, there's another girl who's carrying a much smaller pumpkin. I don't think it's a pumpkin at all.
They're painting leaves. They're painting gourds.
You got to do what you can. This is a scrappy, film.
You know what they could have done? all the money that they spent on painting leaves and buying leaves and gourds and whatever, they could have taken all that money, saved it, bought plane tickets, and filmed this in Illinois.
Nah.
No, they could have.
Speaking of, we get a title of Haddonfield, Illinois, Halloween 1963.
Yes.
And it starts with this. I don't know why these rewatches. I think it's because when we do these rewatches for this, I am like trying to pay attention to every little things that I've never even thought to look at or listen to or anything. It starts with this children's choir of just saying this odd Halloween rhyme. Bug, I know you and I Googled it last night. We were trying to figure out, was this a rhyme that it almost reminds me of the opening of Trick or Treat, which is a movie that I absolutely love, and I can't wait to talk about that soon enough. But I think it's the other perfect Halloween watch of a movie.
Yeah.
But it also starts with like, here are the rules of Halloween, and then they spell it all out. But it's
That's good. That's a good radio voice.
Thank you. I learned it from watching you.
Why would you have learned it from watching me?
I don't know.
It's the sound of my voice, dude.
Yeah, I watch your mouth.
Come on. Get your head in the game, dude.
I told myself not to fuck this up. Don't fuck this up, Eric.
Oh, God. I should have said that before episode 0. But apparently that was just it doesn't seem to have originated anywhere but in this movie. Yeah. A lot of people online are speculating that they probably just came up with it because they didn't have the rights. They didn't have enough money to buy the rights to anything. Yeah. So,
which, to be fair, wouldn't be the first made up song in this movie.
Right.
Yeah.
That is a good point because there are at least 2 others that both Lori sings a song at one point that's just made up, and then Annie sings a song about Paul. But we are outside of a house. We push in on what we learn is the Myers house. Now, the thing I love most about this opening sequence is that it's for pretty much a 5-minute sequence. It is, quote unquote, a oneer. It is one long take of this shot. It's all shot on Panaglide system. We move from outside the house, the front porch. We move around the side of the house. We look up at the, second floor. We move into the kitchen, through the downstairs of the house, up the stairs, into the bedroom, all in one beautiful gliding shot.
Yeah.
You see, so we don't know whose point of view we're from.
Right.
Right. Well, at this point, I don't even think that we would consider as the audience that we are looking at it from a point of view. We just look to be floating through the geometry to get a good a good idea of the space.
We do up until we get to the window.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's a little more voyeuristic.
Intentional.
Correct. Yeah. So the camera is looking at this couple that's making out on this couch. And,
right.
And the female character that we see makes a mention of, oh, well, Michael's around here somewhere.
Right.
So at this point, this is the first time we've heard the word Michael.
Yeah.
As the couple finishes up, they decide to go upstairs to...
Yeah, and the mention of Michael is framed like it's somebody we need to avoid doing this with. It's like, right. Michael's somewhere out there.
Right.
And he's out in the yard because it's the 60s and they don't fucking care. No seat belts. He's outside fucking eating dirt.
So this couple decides to go upstairs and get a little frisky.
Dude,
and
the biggest issue with horror movies ever, which is premarital sex.
That's right.
How dare they?
So this couple goes upstairs and we see the camera back out from the window. But then the camera turns to the right as if to look and see, is there anybody around me watching? This is the first point I think that we were supposed to realize this may be a person.
Okay. Yeah, fair.
So,
and from there we venture into the kitchen, and that's when a little arm reaches out and opens up, kind of like Chucky. Kind of like whenever you see the little Chucky doll hand comes out and opens up the drawer in the kitchen.
Or that one time when it's Andy.
That's closer.
No, but Chucky's better because Chucky kills a lot of people and Andy's just kind of lame.
But pulls out the kitchen knife and
PJ, I want to test your powers of observation for a second.
Okay.
Did you happen to notice if that could be a child's arm that grabbed that knife?
It's definitely not.
It is definitely not. Whose arm is it, Derek?
In this scene, the arm that you see both there and upstairs picking up the mask is none other than Deborah Hill.
I was gonna guess Deborah Hill. That makes sense because it's smaller, but it's like no kid has that many like age signs on the back of their hand.
Well, like the nails are really nicely kept and things like that. And it's like a little kid playing outside would be, ratty.
And we can also tell at this point too, the camera POV is like obviously higher than a child, even though it's supposed to be a child.
My little brother's out there, and yeah, it's creepy. He's like 6'4". Just ignore that. He's Nick Castle. Just don't pay attention to it.
But we moved through the living room where he had just seen them from outside the window. He goes to the foyer of the house and looks up the stairs where the boyfriend is already coming down to leave, putting his clothes back on.
Because she, being Judith Myers, is bad at sex. That's what I've always taken from this scene.
I mean, maybe the opposite. Maybe he's very bad.
No, because he's like, no, don't worry, I'll call you tomorrow. It's very much like I don't know why. It always read to me.
It was over so fast.
And it's funny because Jamie Lee makes a comment about that in the commentary too. Like, wow, that didn't take long for him, did it?
Yeah, I don't know. I take it from the opposite. He seems so disappointed. Maybe he was just like, I don't know. I'm just not feeling this.
Which also is one of my favorite lines because as he's coming down the stairs, she says, "You'll call me tomorrow, right?" And he says, "Yeah." Well, I don't think he's going to be calling her tomorrow.
No, he's not. He has no interest because she's terrible at sex.
Well,
that's what I'm saying. That's the calculus of this scene is that Judith Myers is bad at sex and Michael's about to murder her.
Which is wild that Judith Myers might be bad at sex because Judith Myers was played by Sandy Johnson, who was at the time Playmate of the Month from June of 1974.
Which, another fun fact to launch about Sandy Johnson, that's the inspiration for the name of the character Sandy Cheeks.
I don't think that's right.
I made it up.
I mean, I don't have enough evidence to argue against him.
Okay,
right.
that's true. It's not part of my notes.
Every fact that I make on this show, I make it up.
You guys told me there were no bits on this show.
Not a one.
I've never said that. That's all I do here. That's my job.
But the POV then moves up the stairs. We find a clown mask on the floor. The arm comes out and picks up the mask and puts it on. And then we get
the confirmation, right? It's the confirmation that this is a person because that mask goes onto the camera lens. And now the rest of these shots are through little eye holes.
Right. Yeah. Which is something that would be done again, like in E.T. During the Halloween sequence of that.
Yeah.
But he goes into the bedroom and Judith is there brushing her hair in the mirror, topless, which is why they hired a playmate. And the POV then like raises the knife and begins slashing. And you get a couple like hand moves in front of the camera slashes and then like looks up and to the right to see the upper reaches of the knife as it slashes down.
Which is a good way to do that. If you don't have the ability to do the effects of stab wounds or the in camera blood, if you don't have a way to do that, the easiest way is to focus the action on the knife and the stabbing instead of what it's stabbing into.
Which, as that camera comes down and we see Judith, being injured, interestingly, this is one of the few scenes in the film where we actually see blood.
Yeah.
For this being a slasher film.
Yeah. I mean, that's very similar to this whole sequence in those ways. The things that you're both mentioning are very much like the shower scene in Psycho, is where you focus so much on the editing of, knife, but you never see it actually enter skin.
No penetration. Yeah.
But it's equally as effective because even without that, we all know what a knife is. We all know what that might be. And if the only criticism I have about this sequence, that as the knife is moving, my criticism with the sequence is it's just it feels so like heavy, like so weightless, like it's like lazy. It's not. There's no energy behind it.
It's an awkward slashing movement.
It's just like a Carousel of Progress animatronic, just like moving a knife up and down. And it's like, if I could change one thing, it would be I would in that entry, because they talk about how like Michael's grisly murder of his sister and like he's such a psycho child and I can't believe what he did to that girl. But like I would really show some like kind of viciousness. Cause like later with the stuff that he does to like, Annie and Bob, and specifically Annie, like, choking her, getting tired of doing that, and then just fucking slitting her throat with like a 5-inch long kitchen knife. It's like, yeah, those are barbaric. And then little baby Michael's just like Bob the
baby's first murder.
But I will say though, I think the one effective thing of that scene though is there are some sound effects of the knife going like.
Yeah, you hear. I was trying to count in our last watch how many stab sounds there are. I believe there's about 8.
Yeah.
I don't know if that number is ever given in this movie or any of the next ones describing this murder. But then after that, we follow the POV back down the stairs out the front door of the house where a car is approaching, and a couple begins saying, Michael. And the father reaches out, pulls the mask off of the camera, which then cuts to our second shot of the whole movie, basically.
An absolutely beautiful shot.
Yes.
Just gorgeous. The way it pulls away and up into the clouds is just gorgeous.
Yeah. A crane shot, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, revealing that our killer, if we hadn't put it together, is a 6-year-old boy named Michael Myers.
This sequence reminds me, and obviously this came first, but it reminds me so much of Scream with like the original. Casey Becker's fucking dead, and as she's dying, her parents pull up, and it is just that timing, the syncopation of death versus arrival. It just reminds me so much of that.
And when we see Michael, it's almost like he's in a daze because the mask comes off, and it's just as if he's just staring into nothing.
Yeah,
we cut to black. And a new title of Smiths Grove, Illinois, October 30th of 1978.
Where we introduce the man, the myth, the Pleasance.
This is a beautiful way to bring it up. Donald Pleasance, he plays Dr. Samuel Loomis. He was in The Great Escape from 1963. He's in Fantastic Voyage in 66. He was in the 007 film You Only Live Twice. He was in George Lucas's THX 1138. He is in the 1979 version of Dracula. He reteams with Carpenter for Escape from New York. He was in a movie called Alone in the Dark. I think it's an Italian horror film called Phenomena. He's also back for Prince of Darkness with Carpenter, and he reprises his role, thankfully, in Halloween's 2, 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah. Again, he is the only thing that is consistent in those movies. Laurie's gone in a lot of them. John Carpenter has nothing to do with most of those.
He certainly exhibits the most character. And then Psycho reference number 2, we have Sam Loomis, who is for the namesake of the character from Psycho, Sam Loomis, who was the boyfriend of Marion Crane, Janet Leigh's character.
Yes. Marion, that would what be?
Oh, that's reference number 3.
Yeah, because the person driving Dr. Loomis in this movie is Marion Chambers. She's played by Nancy Stevens. She also was in Escape from New York. She's also in D2, The Mighty Ducks.
Oh shit.
Wow.
What position is she on their team?
Goalie, of course.
That's badass. She's good at driving and she's good at hockey, I guess.
And then she also reprises her role for Halloween 2, H2O, and Halloween Kills.
Okay.
So we'll get to talk about her a little bit more.
Eventually.
Yeah, eventually.
I wonder how her story plays out.
Yeah. Things in this scene, we get our introduction of Dr. Loomis talking about his experience with Michael, that Michael has been in this institution. He has not spoken a word in 15 years. And I don't know, there's not much to this scene. It's just kind of them having this conversation back and forth. They are there to take Michael out of
Smith's
Grove and move him.
It does serve as a nice little exposition scene, just strictly told. It's not an exposition dump that most modern movies have, but it's just enough information in the dialogue to get an idea of the urgency of, you can tell Dr. Loomis is concerned.
Yes.
That this is a serious matter that needs to be attended to. And that she is kind of inquiring to him of, well, how do we handle this? We are kind of in her perspective of, we don't know what to expect with what we presume to be as Michael that he is going to transport.
Yeah. We get this quick cutaway because Marion's smoking in this scene. And so she's using, you see the matchbook that she's using, rabbit and red matches. That's just something that's set up because Loomis finds it later. So they reach the gates of this institution, and it's storming outside. But through the fence, you can see the inmates are just kind of milling about out there in their white gowns.
A line that she says in this movie that has always unsettled me is she's like, the worst part about them is their gibberish.
Yeah.
When they just start ranting, and it's like, oh, that's uncomfortable. Because like you don't think about that, but like that is where he has been for 15 years.
Yeah.
And like then they're all kind of like, it's very, very zombie-ish. They're all just kind of shuffling and shambling around in like a rain-soaked yard kind of behind a fence.
Well, and it immediately puts you like, something is wrong. Because one or the other of them says, like, well, do they normally let them walk
this
around
late at
like
night?
this?
Yeah.
And Loomis is immediately like, pull up. We need to go up here.
And
because he's a man of action. He's like, we gotta go. Be evil.
And so he hops out of the car to go open the fence itself. And
which looks like it's like pried open.
Yeah.
If you really look, it looks like it's been forced.
Yeah. It's not, the pieces of the fence itself are not like touching or latched.
Right.
So he goes to do that. And
this kind of leads us to like almost the first kind of jump scare of the film.
Yeah. It's our first, because it's our first use of the one of the stings.
Yeah.
You get it early, like in the first, but it's a different sting.
It is. It's like a weird little doo-doo-doo.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the beginning when the sister and the boyfriend go upstairs,
whereas
and shut
this
the light off.
is more of like
almost like a crash.
Yes,
yeah,
that's a better description.
Also,
there.
that bug that was great. Do it again. Do-do-do. That's so good.
Perfect. But it's as Michael. Well, we don't know this.
We don't know this at this point.
But a one of the inmates,
with the benefit of hindsight, we know that it is Michael.
Yeah. We see from inside the car, looking out the back window, him crawl up onto the top
it's
of
like
this.
He jumps on it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like Beast from the X-Men. It's like unnerving.
Yes. And so she hears the commotion on, someone is on the roof, something is on the roof.
She does not leave the car or react like how people would.
Which is interesting because they say, if you freeze frame it, Jamie Lee says that you can tell it is Nick Castle. If you freeze frame it just right, you can see his face through the rear windshield.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty cool.
Funny. And then he, reaches in through the window and like kind of grabs her by the hair. I think she accidentally lays on the gas and kind of like drives the car over a little bit, almost into a ditch. It looks like, but she fights loose and kind of slithers across to the other side of the car where,
this kind of brings me to like the one part of the film where it's a hard edit. And I'll let Derek kind of explain it better, but this is the only part that kind of irks me visually.
Yeah, they needed a way for him to be able to smash the window, and so they put a wrench in his hand, like in the palm of his hand. They paint it flesh tone so that it kind of blends in, but you can see it,
right?
Like, and I don't know what they do exactly. It's like there's this weird little cut that happens where the hand comes down into frame behind her head outside the glass. And then as it goes to shatter, it's like they cut out
it's a hard
frame
cut
or something. Like it's a weird little jump.
Like it almost seems as if they started with his hand closer to the window and then he brought it out and then it was like in reverse.
Yeah.
Because when it hard cuts, the second cut starts with his almost like his hand coming away from the window and it's already shattered. It's just kind of jarring.
Yes.
Hey, audience, can you tell we've watched this movie a fuck ton this week? Yeah, no, I also thought it was weird that he would flat palm the window open, like that he would shatter the window with the flat of his palm. And like, he's a fucking psychopath, so I'm not spending too much time. But like, just take some of the robe, tear it off, wrap it around his hand, and have him smash the window with a fist. Like, seeing the flat hand smack a window is just bizarre.
Yeah, I also wanted to say too, is this maybe the first scene in which we kind of get an idea that he is stronger than a normal man?
I mean, maybe
There
that's
are a
what we're
couple
supposed to.
Yeah, there's
I
a couple of scenes.
I take from it that he does not go about these things like a person would, that it is much more animal.
Yeah.
Him jumping onto the car instead of going to the door is like he doesn't know what a car is. Like he doesn't really have a good understanding of that, which everybody makes fun of this movie. How do you learn how to drive? Shut the fuck up. We're not focusing on that shit. If you've read it in a Reddit post about a criticism of this movie, we're not trying to talk about it. But like he runs across the roof. He like knows there's somebody in the car and he's smashing the window trying to kill her instead of just like ripping her out of the car and driving it away. Well, she eventually gets out of the car and is like rolled and kind of like disoriented and gets in like the ditch that the car is almost into. And we see Michael get in the car and peel the fuck out and dip. And it's that very obvious brown, like baby shit brown, got the Illinois like medical department's stencil on the door.
For official use only.
And he dips. And then we find out in this one line of dialogue that Dr. Samuel Loomis is a terrible, terrible therapist. He's awful. And it is why I say that, because he looks at her and he goes, "Oh, yeah." I'm going to do my Loomis impression. Ready?
Yeah, please do.
He goes, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" And she has zero time to answer. He goes, "Are you all right?" He's gone. He gives her no time to answer because he doesn't give a fuck. It's the nicety of, "Ma'am, are you okay? The evil is gone from here." And he just freaks the fuck out. And it is so funny. But that's what I'm saying. Nobody could do this role.
No.
Because it's like, we laugh at it because it's uncomfortable and it's silly.
Can you do it, Christopher Lee?
He's gone.
The evil is gone.
No, I can't. That's just a you fool overtook. But the point is, that's fucking Magneto, bro. But he goes, he's so rattled by this that he's not talking like people talk now. It is, oh my God, he got out. Like, this is the worst thing that could happen to me and anyone else. And no one believes him.
I also wanted to point it out at this, just so you know, when they were filming this and John Carpenter found out that they were going to get Donald Pleasance, he was terrified of him. John Carpenter was terrified of Donald Pleasance.
Yeah.
He was intimidated. And just seeing you enjoy this performance of how eccentric he is. Yeah, the whole time John Carpenter is intimidated by him.
Well, there's two reasons for that. There's two reasons. Number one, Donald Pleasance, big personality, big performances. Number two, and this isn't a fact, this is an assumption of mine. It's an assumption of mine from the first time I watched this movie and every subsequent Halloween film that Don Pleasance is in. During the filming of this movie, he seems like he was plastered. There are moments where things happen and his eyes cut over to action somewhere off screen. And he's just like, "What? What's happening? Yeah, I need my hip flask." And he's just so funny. He seems so gone, dude. He's gone.
Now, my legal advisor, producer Ty, I think he would also say that for just to cover our asses, we, of course, as we make any sort of comments about the sobriety of Donald Pleasance or lack thereof during the filming of this or any other movie he's in, is a complete joke, should be taken as a joke.
Okay. On the advice of counsel, I have to read the following. Any statements or jokes made regarding Donald Pleasance being intoxicated during the filming of Halloween are purely for comedic purposes. I mean, they're not. These remarks are not intended to be factual and should not be taken seriously. We have no evidence to suggest that Donald Pleasance was under the influence while filming. I mean, we do, but okay, sorry.
Stay on track.
You have to read this.
This content is meant for entertainment only and does not reflect any verified historical events of the filming of Halloween. There, I did it. I freed us from any libel charges.
That's good.
But he was plastered.
That's hilarious.
Thank you. We finally meet the most beautiful lady in all of horror history. Activia Yogurt spokesperson, Jamie Lee Curtis. Oh my God, we finally get to say it. Academy Award winning actress, Jamie Lee Curtis.
That's right.
Good for her.
Yes, absolutely.
Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. She returns this is her big breakout role. She then goes on to star in a bunch of horror films.
Bunch of stuff.
Back to back to back. So she's in The Fog, which is also with John Carpenter. She was in Prom Night, Terror Train, an Australian thriller named Road Games.
Which I love.
I haven't seen it, but I want
adore
to.
that movie.
We watched that
We watched all of these in like a week.
on Tubi.
Oh shit, ladies and gentlemen.
She was in Trading Places, which is that by who directed An American Werewolf in London?
John Landis?
Yeah, I think that's a Landis film. And then she is in True Lies, which is from James Cameron.
Yep. With On.
And, you know, I'm sure plenty of people who are listening out there will know her from the Disney film Freaky Friday,
Which is
with
funny
Lindsay Lohan.
because of her being in a movie called Trading Places. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, that is funny. And then she most recently has been in things like Knives Out, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is where she won her Oscar. And then she was in the newest version of The Haunted Mansion. She plays Madame Leota. And she reprises her role in Halloween 2, H2O, Resurrection, and then Halloween 2018, Kills and Ends.
She's also in Borderlands, which marks the low point of her career.
We don't have to talk about that.
Yeah.
Hey, but the horror tie there is that is directed by Eli Roth,
True.
Right.
That is a good point.
And he would go on to make Thanksgiving.
which is great.
It is good.
Yeah, can't wait to talk about that.
Because we're talking about Halloween now. So eventually we'll talk about Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we'll talk about that on Easter or whatever. So, yes, we're introduced to Lori, and she, I mean, almost first thing has to deliver, she's leaving her house for school. But before she gets there, she has to leave a key under the mat of the old Myers house.
Right.
Because her father is a realtor.
Strode Realty. Yeah.
Yes.
He delivers that line so horribly. I don't know who that was, but it's just like, don't forget to put the key under the mat. It's like really robotic. I don't know. That always bummed me out.
Yeah, I'm not sure who that actor is either. There's a couple actors in this who, whenever I look them up, it's like, oh, this is like the only thing you've done.
Yeah.
Okay. But this is where, you know, she begins walking to school, or walking to the Myers house rather. And we meet Tommy Doyle.
Yeah.
This is also the scene where we see some palm trees in the background of this shot, which
Was an unfortunate mistake, but because of the filming location, it is a necessary evil.
yes,
No, the evil is gone.
he just said that.
Just screamed it.
Tommy Doyle is played by Brian Andrews. The only other things that he's really been in are movies called The Santini, 3 O'Clock High, and The Long Days of Summer. I don't know what any of those films are.
Not a clue.
But they meet, and he's introduced as the basically the young boy that she tends to babysit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, clearly not the first time based on the dialogue. Are we gonna do this again? Are we gonna do this again?
and they have like a fun little back and forth. It's nice. Like there is a
Yeah.
built-in relationship there.
I agree.
You very easily pick that up.
This is also serving to show us the neighborhood. We're
Yes.
seeing them walk all these blocks, these streets. We're getting an idea of what this neighborhood looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. They reach the they reach the Myers house, and that's when Tommy kind of gives this first idea of like, this is that scary house that nobody goes up to.
It's the haunted house. Yeah.
You know, it's you know, people dare each other to go up and touch the door.
There's a death curse.
And I mean, I think most small towns, most communities like that have that sort of house
Yeah.
of like, yeah, that's like an abandoned house, or that's the one where, you know, I heard somebody died there, or, you know, whatever. So that's like realistic. And it sets very much this whole sequence sets up Haddonfield and this neighborhood specifically to be very Americana, very middle of the country. This is where people wanted to live at the time. This is where we were escaping the big cities to live in these places. But you should feel safe there.
Again, kind of like where Derek and I grew up. You
Right.
know, very, you know, kids riding bikes around, staying out late, not having to lock your doors necessarily.
Yeah.
I want to be really clear. I also grew up basically in suburbia because the way it's being framed is like you guys grew up in this really safe neighborhood, and I grew up in the Bronx. But I didn't.
Yeah.
I grew up in a prison.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was a prison baby.
Were you like Bane?
Yeah. But from The Dark Knight Rises,
Molded by it and whatnot.
Yeah, I spoke through an echo chamber.
Laurie goes up, leaves the key under the mat, and our POV, the camera's POV more than anything, is shooting outside of the like screened door. And so we see her approach. She leaves the key, walks back. Tommy won't even come off the sidewalk to walk up. And as she's walking away, a shoulder walks into frame.
See, like the shoulder and like some of the wisps of like, because that mask's hair is like super matted. But this is the first, because I always wondered when the events of the movie, because we're cutting ahead just a second, but Michael will break into the hardware store in Haddonfield to steal supplies and a mask. And why they sell Halloween masks at the hardware store, who fucking cares? But I wondered if that was before or after. Right now, it has to have been before, because as he moves into frame, the hair is obviously like the matted sort of like costume hair of that mask. So
I also want to point out too, when he comes into frame, the music swells up. Like almost as if it's like doom.
It was crazy because it's like, Laurie, if you had just waited 20 more minutes and he would have been face down, ass up, eating that dog. Maybe he wouldn't have noticed.
Hey, we don't know it's a dog.
Might have been a skunk.
It could have been a skunk.
What I will say is that in the last movie we talked about, Megan murders a dog.
Oh,
and in this one, Michael eats one. So, a lot of dog violence.
So the current dog kill counter is at 1.
Yeah.
For the record.
Michael 1, dogs 0. Yeah. Bug and I kept track of all the dog
We
deaths.
did. We counted pumpkins and dog deaths.
Pumpkins, dog deaths.
I think this is also where we get our shot of Loomis and someone who works at the institution walking out, and Loomis is very angry, saying, hey, you didn't do enough to keep him in. And the one thing that I've warned you about for 15 years has now happened.
And even still, the guy who works there is like, well, we don't know where he's going. We don't know what he's doing. And Loomis is like, yes, we do. Yes, I do. I'm better at this than you.
Loomis, like Babe Ruth points at the stands. He points his finger at Haddonfield.
He just knows
that's where he went.
Like cardinal north on a compass. Loomis knows where Haddonfield is in relation to him at all times so that he can point there.
Which in this case, he does say it's 150 miles from Smith's Grove to Haddonfield.
Right.
So we do get a little bit of geography, not knowing where either of those places are or if they're real.
And I think it's pretty cool too, because I think this is also one shot. Correct?
Oh, yes.
Of them coming out of the building.
It's
Loomis
a beautiful
getting into the car.
Panaglide, I assume the camera person is holding that Panaglide system and somebody is holding their back basically to make sure they don't bump into anything and walking them, sidewinder back down this sidewalk, down like the wheelchair ramp to the steps leading down to, because, Loomis is parked in a handicap spot.
Yeah.
Loomis is handicapped, confirmed?
No. He's just an asshole.
No,
Apparently he's just a drunk.
Well, that's why he's in the handicap spot. He was driving drunk. He didn't notice, and he parked wherever he wanted to. What I will say is, again, the movie creeps into pop culture for the next, 30, 40 years. And a thing that this Smith's Grove reminds me of that is more current is the way the building looks and like that entry to the medical facility into the parking lot reminds me of the Hawkins lab from Stranger Things.
That's where I thought you were going.
Yeah. Just makes me think of that. Especially like in the second season with like Paul Reiser, where they're like going and meeting him and talking to him.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it reminds me of a lot.
Well, that's set in the early 80s.
Yeah.
So.
And Hawkins is also obviously supposed to be like a similar area to Haddonfield. The difference is
Indiana, right?
Yeah.
Hawkins, Indiana.
Yeah. The difference is that the Duffer Brothers decided that they were going to shoot Stranger Things in the Midwest.
Oh.
Yeah.
We'll see how that worked out for them.
Really well.
Laurie is then in class. And she is a cool kid. She's in the very back of the classroom.
Yeah.
Next to the window.
Where the back of the classroom has rows and rows and rows of encyclopedias, reminding us yet again, the future, kids, is better than the past was.
And why would there be encyclopedias in a literature class? Encyclopedias are full of facts, are they not? Not literature.
Yeah, but they're also filled with words, which are
True.
literature. I'm grasping at straws, dude.
That checks out.
Oh, good.
The main thing, I guess, to pull from this, other than Lori looking out the window and seeing Michael standing across the street staring at her.
Yeah. Which is horrific.
Yeah.
It's broad.
Oh,
daylight.
it's one of the probably scariest shots of the movie.
It's broad daylight. It's a school, and he's staring. He happens he couldn't have followed her into the school,
Right.
So was he just pacing driving the out until he found maybe looking at her through the window, the logistics. And that's always a fun little experiment to do during the watches of this movie is, well, where is he while this is happening? What is he doing? And it's like, how would he have found her? And it's like, he got lucky and he just found her at the window. Or something that Bug was talking about through the last rewatch, is he there at all? Which here I think he would have to be.
Right. Because at this point, Jamie Lee is the only person, or Laurie Strode rather, is the only person that's seen him now.
Right. Because eventually this movie goes on to really play with, is he there or is she seeing him? But here, I mean, not only is he with the station wagon, but also it's, the first time she's seen him. So it would be, this is what sets the image in her mind of what Michael looks like from that distance. But yeah, the fact that it's a school, especially now with the climate of what school safety is like in this country specifically, that's terrifying.
Yeah. Those are both good points. The other thing that it could be, and the only reason I bring this up is because it's what's being discussed in this class, is could it be fate?
Fair enough.
That is the lesson that is being taught. I haven't done a lot of research or reading into the authors that are mentioned in this chat, Samuels and Collins.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything on Samuels.
We don't know anything about books learning. We watch movies.
Exactly. But I just like to point out that, yes, that is the lesson being learned here, and that it proves that even when Lori is not paying attention fully, she's looking out the window and kind of being a little freaked out of what is this masked man staring at me for?
Right.
She still has enough wherewithal to answer the question.
When asked,
Yes.
she immediately has the answer.
When she looks again, he's gone. How would Loomis say that?
He's gone.
And then we go to leave, the school day is over, I guess. And we cut to the elementary school where all the kids are leaving.
Shut the fuck up, everyone. We know it's an outdoor school. That wouldn't happen in the the Midwest. We know. Shut up. Anyway, Derek, please continue. I told them to shut up so they won't interrupt you.
That's good. But I'm glad you point those things out because those are what you hear every single time this movie's brought up.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's tons of things that we're going to talk about that, yes, they've been brought up before, but
oh, you nailed it. You nailed it, Fat Dick 69 on Reddit. You nailed it. It being an outdoor school makes this a bad movie. You got it. No, it's still great. Shut up.
But this is where we catch back up with Tommy.
With his pumpkin.
With his giant pumpkin. He is being bullied by a couple kids.
One of them's name is Lonnie, for the record.
Fuck Lonnie Elam.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and call it.
Yeah.
Good.
All my homies.
I hope that all of the terrible things happen to him.
And they eventually will. In this movie, the worst thing that could happen to you, he is assaulted by a drunk Thomas Lessons.
But the worst thing that happens to Tommy right now is after they kind of pester him about he's going to get the boogeyman is out to get you. And I guess this is like the first time that this concept of a boogeyman has been brought to Tommy's attention.
Does he not say earlier when they go to the Myers house, does he not tell Lori that the boogeyman lives there?
Maybe.
Does he? I don't know I think he says it there. I think that may be the first time.
Okay. So
But
maybe that is kind of the local legend
Right.
of, the boogeyman lives there. And so they're pestering him of like, well, he's going to come out tonight and he's going to get you.
Well, it's like I remember being a kid and like my older cousins would be like, oh, Bloody Mary, give me the formuoli or whatever. And they'd do those things to freak you out as a kid. So like maybe the boogeyman's less, necessarily specific to this neighborhood. Maybe it's just we're asshole kids. He's younger. Let's freak him the fuck out because it's Halloween.
Yeah.
Lori even goes on to say like, well, it's Halloween. People take this day to scare the fucking shit out of each other. So that's probably what happened to you, Tommy. And he's like, okay, Lori, but if I point this fucker out to you like 4 times, you best start believing in ghost stories. And she's like, nah, I'm going to let him kill all my friends. Then I'll believe you. Spoilers, I guess.
But Tommy's then tripped and he falls and unfortunately crushes his giant pumpkin.
Correct.
Which because of the so few actual pumpkins that they had, this was they had to get this shot right in one take.
Yep.
There was no take backsies on this. One of the bullies, I don't know which one it is. Is it Lonnie itself or is it one of the other guys who bumps into Michael?
No, I think it is Lonnie.
Okay.
Because that's mentioned in Kills. That's
Okay.
because he does. That's
Thank
a flashback.
you.
Yeah.
The bullies run away, they scatter, and Lonnie bumps into as Michael comes into frame from the left.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another little audio
Another
sting.
score swell. Yeah. Audio cue score. Yeah.
And he looks up, Lonnie looks up into the face of, because we don't see the face or head of Michael.
You see, for just a few shots,
Yeah.
you see that like neck piece that's like painted white. You can see that. I got to tell you, man, the idea, and we'll get, we'll talk about this mask a handful of times, but even seeing it across the street from Lori's perspective, it is so, because Nick Castle seems a little bit tanned. It's the 70s. So, people go out for fun and he seems a little bit tanned, but especially with the stark contrast of that white painted mask. And it is just ghastly. It is so effectively scary. Now it's culturally different. It's like in the zeitgeist, people know that mask, but I can't imagine seeing the footage of that for the first time.
Right.
Has to be terrifying. Cause even seeing like in this scene where Lonnie runs the fuck off and Michael's just standing there and you just see his coveralls, you see his neck where the line of that mask that's painted white bobs in and out of frame. And it's like, ooh, that's unnatural. That shouldn't look like that. It's really good. It's really effective.
And even because it takes place on Halloween, so you can kind of write it off of like, okay, yeah, people wear masks and costumes or whatever, but it's like, this is broad daylight and a grown man.
Well, it's a grown man, but he's not wearing a costume. It's a grown man wearing a scary fucking mask.
And no one is paying him any mind.
Right.
I also like how this is the kind of the first part of the movie where we kind of see what this movie does that other movies don't do, where it takes its time. It builds the tension.
Because we get this beautiful Panaglide shot moving with Michael in the foreground and Tommy in the way background.
Like in the courtyard.
Past a chain link fence across the entire like schoolyard, walking down the sidewalk. And then Michael gets into a car and then we're inside the car with him following along another sidewalk to follow Tommy very slowly, just watching.
Yeah.
Just waiting.
Well, I have a note here that I took because it reminded me of something. What's funny is I almost began to say it. This is, by the way, the moment where I went in our last rewatch. No, I'm not saying this now. I'm waiting for the podcast. It's Tommy is followed. Michael follows him like from the car.
It's like a
drives.
solid minute.
Yeah. And you have the obvious things that you can comment about, like stalking children, following children, a grown man following a child. There's implications there. I don't think there's anything perverse about this in that kind of, like what you would generally think about with the words stalking a child from school. I look at this like Michael commits his first murder as a child and is in that penitentiary for 15 years or, asylum or whatever word you want to use. And he is emotionally that child. And it's like, You ever go to a zoo and you're looking at specifically apes because we are so similar to them genetically, and you can look at them and be like, oh, look, we do that. Or, oh, I remember, when like you're a baby, that's what you do too. It's like, the local zoo here, Zoo Tampa, I recently went for the first time in years and years and years. They have like an orangutan family. And like the father orangutan is 21, I think, but they throw him treats and he reaches his hand out and he grabs them and he just sits and he chews on them or whatever. And you're like, oh, wow, that's so fun. Cause like, it's like holding your hand out. It's like, I can see myself in that. And that's why I think Michael follows him is like, oh, I remember being human. I remember being a child. And Tommy's little and blonde and he kind of looks like Michael did. And it's like, that's what I think is he's looking at Tommy like a zoo animal because Michael has zero humanity, but he has memories. And it's creepy when I think about it. Like when you frame it that way, that Michael is just following this child home from school to remember what it was like to be a human being, it's terrifying.
Absolutely. I also think it's one of those things where, Michael does see Lori come up to the house to leave the key,
right,
and sees Tommy on the, the sidewalk with her. And so he's made this connection of, who is this woman, who is this girl who is brave enough to come up to my door, latches onto her for whatever reason, follows her to school, looks at her through the window. But then he also knows that, well, she has a connection to this boy as well.
Right.
And we kind of see that a little more later in the film because other people that he sees connected to Lori, he ends up following as well.
I'd also like to kind of point out to the next kind of Hitchcockian point. We get voyeurism. I mean, we have technically behind the door when they come to the Myers house. We have outside of the school where he's staring at Lori. And now we have the sequence of him following little Tommy Doyle.
Yeah.
I mean, and at some points in the film, we're going to get to pretty quickly, we almost take the perspective of Michael holding on certain scenes of these teenage girls walking down the sidewalk. So just something else I'd like to point out too.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because our next scene is Loomis has stopped at a phone booth 73 miles from Haddonfield. And you brought up a point while watching this.
Yeah, this was
Crossroads.
Neat. I was rewatching it at my house the weekend before this, and I had it in my living room, and my wife was walking back and forth. And as I'm watching this scene, I couldn't help but look at how the camera looks, the scene looks, the phone booth, and because Loomis goes into a phone booth to make a call at this intersection. And it kind of hit me. So as my wife is walking by, I said, "Hey, babe, look at this and tell me. Just look at this. I'm going to rewind it. Just look at this scene and tell me the vibe it gives you." And immediately she goes like, the birds, or Hitchcock. Vertigo. I'm like, yes, Vertigo, Hitchcock.
South by Southwest.
It has that very
North by
Northwest.
Yeah, South by
We're
Southwest
not going to the festival.
Yeah. Sorry, I got ahead of myself.
By the way, the Third Channel podcast calls the South by Southwest Airlines Film Festival.
Right. Which I'm also pretty sure, I highly doubt that phone booth works. That is out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. I highly doubt it works. But anyway, for the sake of the story.
But this is where, he makes this phone call. He's still on his way to Haddonfield, obviously. And then as he finishes up his call, he walks down to this Phelps garage truck that seems to be crashed off the side of the road. There's also a oncoming train because it's right next to this set of train tracks. And apparently from what they say in the commentary is just happenstance that as they're shooting this, the train starts coming through. And so Donald Pleasance is walking away from the camera. And when they finally cut to the reverse shot of him walking up to the truck, like,
train's long gone.
The train is long gone, but that is as much footage as they had of him walking away because he thought the take was blown because the train was
coming.
And they were just like hoping he would just go. And so, I mean, like that is the last frame before he turns back around to look at the camera like, sorry guys. Like, but
the train is gone. He picks up the matchbook.
Yes. He picks up like the white, like clothing that Michael would have been wearing
the gown.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he finds the matchbook on the ground.
Yeah.
And he puts it together. Now, my question yesterday was, had Loomis just randomly stopped at this intersection to make a phone call at this phone booth and then notice the truck? Or did he notice the truck, stopped, and then made his phone call and put it all together after? Like, I don't know which it is.
I mean, when I look at it, he doesn't seem too alerted by the wreck of because the truck looks as if it's been ran off the road. Like Michael ran the truck off the road, went to him, killed the guy, stole his coveralls.
Right.
But like when he finishes the phone call, which I believe is with the sheriff's department in Haddonfield, like he's on his way. He doesn't look too alarmed. He's already looking in the direction of the truck. He sees the dirt, the roughed up dirt and mud of the truck going off. So I think he already sees it, and he is warning the sheriff's department, "Hey, I have found something that looks like he's here. Get ready."
Like the classroom, I like to think that this is also just a teaching of fate. It's supposed to happen. Loomis needs a clue, needs something to look for. This gives him what Michael might be wearing.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot.
That too.
But yes, that is kind of the answer of why he wears what he wears in this movie.
Which is funny because that answers what he wears in this movie. I wonder why, and kind of the next movie. I wonder why he wears a jumpsuit for the next 40 years.
We'll find that out. They always give a reason. We then are introduced to Lori and her other friends as they're leaving school. Linda Vanderclock is played by PJ Souls. She had appeared.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
PJ, is she your namesake?
No, that's me, guys.
Oh my god, you were
zip, and then I take my costume off.
You have great tits.
You're
Thanks,
a
man.
wonderful blonde.
Oh, thanks, guys.
She had been in Carrie.
Oh yeah.
She had a smaller part in that. She was in Rock and Roll High School. She was in Stripes, which is the comedy with
Bill Murray.
with Bill Murray.
Second Bill Murray reference.
She was in Jawbreaker in the early aughts, and then she is in The Devil's Rejects.
Who is she in The Devil's Rejects?
I don't know. I should have written that down. We're then also introduced to Annie Brackett.
Yes.
Which I will talk about. She is played by Nancy Kyes.
Guys,
but she is...
audience, he has blushed to like tomato red right now.
No, I definitely haven't.
He loves Nancy Loomis so much.
do love Nancy Loomis. But yes, that is how she is credited in this film. She was in John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13. She later is in The Fog, Halloween 3, and then in 2024 she was in a horror film called Hauntology. But those are pretty much her only roles.
Weird. Yeah.
Well, fortunately for you, we get to see much more of Annie Brackett.
I'm so happy of her performance in this film. And any time that I get to see her at all, she has an odd way of delivering lines that I love for whatever reason. Especially in the later scene, whenever she's in the kitchen talking on the phone and the dog comes in.
Yeah.
I'll go over that later. Anyway, sorry, don't get me started. So the girls are walking home from school. They are very much, talking like teenage girls, back and forth, talking about the homecoming dance.
They talk about, one thing they talk about is the fact that like Paul, who Annie's boyfriend, is grounded for egging houses. What is it? Egging houses and soaping windows.
Yeah.
And so he's grounded. And it's like they are seniors in high school. And it's just like, or like, you know what I mean? They're adult enough. And it's like, that makes this movie a period piece. The fact that it's not like, oh yeah, he was leaving like hate comments on someone's Instagram to try to get them to off themselves, and then like leaving, like racist spray paint under the bridge or whatever. It's the fact that he was soaping windows and egging houses and now he's grounded. It's like cements that into the past.
No, that's very true.
And like I said before, I mean, we spend a lot of time with these three girls.
Yes.
I mean, we are watching them walk and talk across blocks of this neighborhood, talking about
like
the plans for the night, the plans for the next day. And, and again, this kind of cements that comfortableness that they have in this neighborhood. They don't expect anything out of the ordinary to happen.
Right. Until, Michael comes driving past in the station wagon.
Yeah.
The very famous speed kill scene.
Yes. So he very creepily drives past and like
He is leaned all the fucking way. He's like pulling his body weight up by the steering wheel to like look out the window like, bitch, I see you.
Which is also funny because at this point, Linda's character is just so obsessed with talking about their boyfriends and relationships. She goes, that kind of looks like Devin Graham. He's kind of cute. And Lori this whole time is like, I know this car. She is like instantly like, this is not right.
yeah, why do I keep seeing that car and who is driving it? And then Annie yells at him, speed kills. Which of course is, I mean, I guess like what a drug reference.
I think.
Yeah, I've only ever heard like crack kills, but I guess maybe that's adjacent to it. It's also just probably just a throwaway. She's young,
And you're driving too fast in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
it's weird. It's clunky, but she delivers it really well.
And then he slams on brakes.
Yeah.
Which puts just the immediate stop of, anything. What is going to happen at this moment?
Right.
And they all get like, at this point, they're all like kind of frozen. Even Annie is like, oh, what did I just do?
Because that's just it. It's like you have no idea who this is in this car because it's not a car. I mean, think about it. They know, to your point, they live in this neighborhood. They live in this town. They know most people. You know what people drive.
Well,
You've
and like
seen
they
these cars.
make
You've
they
never
make
seen
this
one.
walk home on
Every
these
day.
streets every day.
Right.
You know, the cars in the driveways. This has a fucking mental institution.
Which also
decal
kind of
on it.
feeds into Linda's character saying, oh, is that Devin Graham? Because she thinks that might be his car and
Right.
be him. Right.
But he eventually, he drives away after that beat. And this is where we get this long, lingering shot where the camera had kind of been following along behind the girls, and it finally stops at the end of the street, and they walk, and we almost watch them walk clear down to the other end of the block.
Yeah.
And it's this something that we talked about with Black Christmas. I think I mentioned it off the top, but this is where we really get this play with when are we in the killer's point of view and when are we just the camera point of view?
Right.
When are we the audience versus the killer? And
Or both.
or both.
Or both.
Because then it plays with Bug's point of voyeurism.
Yeah.
Of like we watching the movie are witnessing, we're looking into the lives of these people.
Well, we're looking and witnessing, but because we are unable to help, and we are unable to stand in the way of the harm and hardship that these people have to suffer, we then and we talked about this from the very beginning of this podcast of like something that horror does so well is it almost blames the audience. It's like,
Yes.
well, you watched this, you
Right.
watched it happen, and this movie really cements like no matter how badly you'd like to turn away, you're Michael. You can't. The only reason this movie is happening is because of you, and it's this cements that and signs your name on it.
Yeah. Linda, they reach her house. She goes inside. And then we get one of our most famous shots from this, which is Michael standing just past this hedge.
Yeah.
Which building up to this, we have a camera that's on Lori and Annie walking. At just before this part, Annie looks down into her backpack. Lori is still looking straight ahead. Cut to
The reverse shot.
Their POV of there is Michael standing halfway behind this hedge. So still at this point in the movie, we think that only only Laurie Strode's character has seen Michael
Right.
because nobody else has.
Well, and the other thing is that when you finally get the shot of Michael behind the hedgerow, obviously the person who's playing as Michael Myers in this particular game of Fortnite does the backpack floss kid dance emote. And so he's just sitting there fucking getting it like crazy.
And then he ducks behind that hedge.
Yeah.
You got to dab on him. And so Annie doesn't spot him.
No.
And Lori points that out, but Annie goes to look behind the hedge because
That's what Annie Brackett does.
Yeah.
She is the.
She's very just, yeah.
she's a shit kicker. Like
in Curse of Chucky, I mentioned that the thing that Nika needs is for her to be paranoid and for a friend to ground her from her paranoia. That's what that film needed to be more believable and to make Nika's character more relatable. That's what Annie does for Laurie in this movie, is that Laurie is freaking the fuck out because she's seen this guy a dozen times. And Annie's going, oh, you know, and it's a funny line of dialogue. Like, he wants to smooch you, whatever she says. And then, you know, Laurie goes around the corner and he's not there. And she's like, I'm just fucking with you, dude. Relax. Like, there's nobody here. You're losing your mind. And it's like, okay, fine. Maybe he's not there. I you know, she questions herself. She questions what she's seeing. But you're to have agency, your main character has to stay grounded.
Yeah.
Until the end, because if not, the movie can't happen.
Right.
It's also important at this part, too, that Annie makes the comment, oh, I guess you scared another one off, Laurie. And you see Laurie kind of get that little bit of a somber moment because up to this point, she has not really talked about any love interests, boys, or anything else. She's focused on school, as we saw from the school scene earlier. So we are kind of setting her up in that final girl kind of archetype that she is not boy crazy and everything else at this time.
This is also where we get one of PJ's favorite moments in this film.
It's my favorite cameo in the whole movie. As they're passing the hedgerow and this scene kind of begins to unfold, you just see the tiniest little wisp of a cloud go past the screen. These little tiny wisps. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the cigarette smoke of legendary filmmaker John Carpenter. And I have quit smoking. I haven't smoked a cigarette in hundreds of days at this point.
Hell yeah.
But let me tell you something. If I could smoke a cigarette, I would smoke the cigarette also being smoked by John Carpenter. He might look dead, but I'd share some spit with him. Only in this context.
And it's so funny because in the commentary, Jamie Lee points that out too. And he's just like, yeah, I know.
He's like, sorry, look, you gotta do the voice right. He's like, yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I've been smoking for so long. He lights another one and he plays. We
only got 3 weeks to film this. Give me a break.
They only gave me a pack of Lucky Strikes a day. They're toasted.
But to kind of bring it back to, he has disappeared. And so what it does is, as they then continue down the street, there is hedge after hedge after hedge. And so you then are questioning as the audience, as much as Laurie, I'm sure, is like, well, he could be anywhere at this point.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that you question is, well, how the fuck did he get away?
Yes.
Right.
And it's like, there's a chance that he just slipped through the bush. There's a chance that he's hiding in other landscaping. There's also a chance, which is visually unnerving, that he just fucking took off. And it's like, none of that's good. Again, it reminds me of the fucking board game.
Yes, because,
It's, well, I just fucking saw him. Where the fuck did he go? Guys, play the Trick or Treat Halloween board game. It's really good.
So Annie then splits off. She goes off to home. And that's when we get Laurie kind of taking one last kind of look of like, maybe I imagine this. Maybe everything is fine. And
Maybe
then
it's
jump
Maybelline.
scare of the introduction of Sheriff Lee Brackett.
Yes. And he has, oh my God, I love this performance so much because he is just like Midwest, like his eyebrows go crazy and like he does like big, you can't see me, but he does like big over like lippy mouth, and he's just like, well, you know, Laurie, everybody's entitled to one good scare, and it's just like so weird.
He almost reminds me of, oh my God, is it Paul Lynn? Is that the TV actor I'm thinking of? Like from I Dream of Jeannie? This reference may be way off.
No, I know who you're talking about.
But that's always who it makes me think of. Sheriff Lee Brackett is played by Charles Cyphers. He was also in Assault on Precinct 13. So it's something that, you know, you've probably noticed with a lot of these people is they worked with John Carpenter in smaller roles in that film, and then he carried them over into this one. Because this was only John Carpenter's third like major film. He also did some TV work that I didn't mention off the top, a couple TV movies as well. I may, you know, we'll talk about those maybe a little bit later. We got plenty of Carpenter stuff to cover.
It is Paul Lind. I just looked at it. Yeah, it's like that certain sort of, very like stilted kind of like almost transatlantic, but like it's got that Chicago sort of like everyone's entitled to one good scare. And it's just like, it's so weird. It's so unique.
Yes.
It's also funny to notice too in this scene where Lori catches, where she gets startled by him and she's looking back as she turns around and she goes to do she's already smiling.
Yes.
In the commentary, Jamie Lee Curtis mentioned that they had done this take so many times and she just couldn't do it without laughing.
Yeah.
So that's why you see her already smiling when she turns to face Terrell Cypher's
She does
character.
her best to try and cover her mouth.
Yeah.
But you can see.
Really quickly, on the topic of Jamie Lee Curtis and watching her perform, the first thing I saw Jamie Lee Curtis in, my first experience with her, is Freaky Friday. It's, I think for our generation, a lot of people, it's probably Freaky Friday.
I think so.
The very next thing of hers that I saw is Halloween. That's how long I go without seeing anything. Now I've seen fucking 24 things that she's been in,
Right.
but this is the next thing I see. So it goes from her being, this term might be kind of gross, but she goes from being very milfy. That's like the whole point of her character. She's a hot mom, to very young. And it's like, it feels so nice. It's such a nice, like, warm feeling to see her this young and this energetic and happy, because it's like, aw, you do so well.
Yeah.
You want to tell her, like, you do such a good job. Your bowel movements are so regular, and we're so proud of you.
And eventually you're going to get that Oscar.
That's right.
And it's funny because she also says too that after the first day of filming, her roommate, they got a phone call. I can't remember who was. Do you remember who the roommate was she was living with? And it was another actress. After the day of filming, they got a phone call to their apartment. The roommate answered the phone, calls out to Jamie and says, "Hey, John Carpenter's on the phone for you." Jamie Lee was so concerned that her acting that day was so bad. She's like, "I'm done. I'm canned. He's calling to
that's
fire
sad.
me." Calls her, says, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know you did great today. Thank you for all your hard work." She says that is the only time a director has ever done that for her.
And no one's ever done it since.
And I'm sure that's what she needed in that moment. She describes, because John Carpenter and Deborah Hill were, they were like her film parents during the making of
Her and
this.
Deborah Hill became like best friends.
Yes.
Well, it's like, it reminds me of Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman to the girl who played Matilda.
Mara Wilson.
Yeah.
Mara Wilson.
I
yeah.
like stories like that.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Third Channel podcast, filled to the brim with feel-good stories and jokes that aren't funny.
Lori has made it home, and she goes into her bedroom where there is, some interesting things on the wall, including a straw hat.
Straw hat, a poster of an artist who you told me you both told me.
Yeah, I had to look this up, and it is it's a poster of James Ensor, who is a Belgian painter, right?
Belgium's famous painter.
Famous for portraying human figures in grotesque masks.
There it is.
It's also interesting to point out too. This scene is the one she auditioned with. This whole scene of her going to the window, seeing Michael, answering the phone, all of it. This was her audition scene.
Yeah, and cut to the chase. We do see Michael here again in a really super famous shot of he's standing
In her backyard.
like in between the
Laundry,
sheets that are on. Yeah, because again, kids, we used to not have dryers. But but you pointed out something interesting that I hadn't thought about with this.
So you see a shot of her looking down through the window. We cut to a shot of him in the yard. We cut back to basically the same shot of her looking down through the window. She doesn't look away. In the classroom scene, she looks out the window, looks back at her book, looks out the window, looks back at her book, answers the question, looks back at the window. Oh, he's gone. This time it's like she's looking out the window. We cut to him looking out the window, cut back, and he's just gone, which means she witnessed him run away.
Well, I think it either means she witnessed him run away, or she is so startled at this point, she is imagining him there.
yeah,
It's playing with that.
But you as the audience, even you don't know. At this
they're
point.
white sheets. You see anything, a shadow underneath one of the sheets makes it look like a body, and now all of a sudden you picture him there, or he's got like a Mario tunnel, and he whoop, 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 and he's just fucking
She then leaves the house. She's changed clothes. She's going to go
After a phone call with Annie, where at first she thinks it's like a creep call.
Yeah, because there's no answer. There's no sound on the other line.
Yeah. But eventually they get in touch with each other, and she's like, all right, I'm picking you up and I'm going to bring you, because they're all babysitting, but they've all worked out this plan that everyone is babysitting, but everybody except for Lori is going to use that as an opportunity to go have sex with someone else.
Right.
Because they're disgusting teenagers. So she walks out,
and she sits on the corner, and this is our last little moment to me of like innocence.
Like Lori is still a kid.
Yeah, because she's sitting there, she's holding this pumpkin that she's gotten because I'm sure she heard that Tommy, his unfortunately was smashed, and so she's bought this pumpkin for them to carve a jack-o'-lantern. And she looks down the street, and there are kids like trick-or-treating. They're in costume. They're with their parents. They're laughing. And she has this like just smile on her face. And it's just a very nice shot.
Yeah.
It almost seems like it's a scene for her to kind of realize, you know what? Okay, maybe everything is okay.
Right.
These kids are out here having a good time. I'm about to go, hang out and babysit Tommy Doyle. Everything is, I'm startled, but everything is fine.
And then Annie gets there, which I'm very excited about. And they begin smoking weed.
Oh, smoking weed and listening to the Coupe de Villes.
And PJ, do you remember what song is playing in the car?
I do not.
At that point, it's the Coupe de Villes.
It is the Coupe de Villes at that point.
The later scene
is Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper.
Right. There's also Annie mentions that there's a 6-hour horror-thon playing that night by a horror host called Dr. Dementia. And not a real horror host as far as I'm aware. But we get to kind of see and catch parts of this. We never see him, but we do see the movies that they're watching.
We hear his voice.
Yeah.
We do hear his voice.
We hear his voice. Yeah.
You know what's interesting is that later on, Dr. Dementia would eventually host from Haddonfield, from his, because I imagine it's like public access. Eventually he would go on to host Stabathon.
Oh.
Whoa.
Yeah.
We cut to a scene then with Loomis at the cemetery because he's going to check out the gravesite of Judith Myers.
Right.
The I don't know, guy who runs the cemetery. I don't know what you call that person.
Yeah, I don't know what his name is.
But he is rattling off this odd story to Loomis and Loomis could not care less.
No, because he is drunk. He couldn't care less because that guy's name isn't Jim Beam.
Which is also interesting too, because do we know why he's led to the graveyard? Is there anything before this that hints at him having to go to the graveyard?
No, because he hasn't even met up with the sheriff yet.
Yeah.
I think that you could make the assumption that the graveyard is the closest thing into town that he could go and kind of like, because he wants to confirm that Michael's here. He's sure of it, but he needs to know 100%. And that this is a good way to start because he's the person with the best psychological understanding of the things that Michael would or would not do. That's what the movie tells us. And so I think it's a safe assumption that he goes, if Michael comes here, he's going to fuck with Judith's grave. That's just something he's going to do.
But if we haven't said it, the Judith Meyer headstone has been taken.
Yeah.
Michael isn't following the girls in the car, and they pull up to the hardware store where Annie's father, Sheriff Brackett, is. There's been a break in there. PJ mentioned this before.
Stole some rope, some stuff, like some tools and a mask.
Yes. He
Also,
specifically says a couple of knives as well.
Yeah. A couple of knives. Yeah.
All of the footage of Michael driving behind them, where through the windshield, you just see that brown
Just that
station wagon following them.
that
It's
silhouette.
fucking terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
So scary.
Well, and he Bug pointed this out during our rewatch. Is like, it's not like he even has a car length between them. He is like right.
Yeah.
He's on them. Yeah.
He's inside of them.
But again, these girls are so oblivious to this, they don't even notice.
Oh, they're high.
Well,
They are
that.
a little high.
But it's also, to Bug's point, why should they think that anything is going wrong in their little town?
Well, and you kind of have a juxtaposition of that because immediately after that, Loomis is at the hardware store. He's there to speak to Sheriff Brackett. But because of how drunk he is, he's just looking aimlessly, like listfully at the hardware store, just like, oh, what do they sell here? And then the fucking station wagon just whips way behind him.
Why does the hardware store sell masks?
Yeah, he's like, I wonder if he stole a mask from this hardware store. Drinking some liquor in the front of this store. That's what he does. And
the girls are then driving. They're talking about homecoming. This is where we get our mention of kind of, Lori is interested in one of the boys in town, Ben Tramer. And
rest in peace.
Whoa.
That's big spoilers.
Whoa.
And Michael again is following the girls. This is a shot, like this is a scene that she mentions in the commentary that they had to kind of do a pickup shot for, because the very next scene, it is now nighttime.
Yeah.
And so they needed a little transitional scene that shows the sun is now setting. So they shoot it at the golden hour. But it's just kind of the girls going back and forth talking about, boys. And it finally kind of reveals that Lori does have somebody she's interested in. So yeah, she's maybe a little bit like her friends here. But Michael follows them and watches Lori get dropped off at the Doyle's house.
The Doyle's house. Yep.
And then Annie goes and catty corner the house across the street.
Yeah, almost just perfectly across the street.
To the
Wallaces.
Thank you.
And she parks, and we made the comment about this. She parks in their garage or their shed.
Well, and at one point she does laundry there. I think it does two things. I think it establishes that Annie is so brash that she just doesn't fucking care. And then the other thing, I think it establishes that she's there all the time.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Much like how, in the earlier scene, it's very much that Lori is Tommy's babysitter.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Annie is Lindsay's babysitter.
Again, this is all routine. This is all stuff they're used to.
Mm-hmm.
Loomis and Brackett go to the Myers house. This is where we get our reveal of Michael has eaten a dog.
Yeah. It's also where we get the speech from the clip.
Yes.
Which is amazing.
The performance that Pleasance gives in that, it's some of my favorite little lines. His delivery is just so truly haunted,
cynically jaded, just gone.
Yeah.
At this point in the film too, again, we've mentioned it is nighttime.
Yes.
And I would like to point out that this is where a lot of the cinematography, a lot of the visuals, this is where everything goes up a notch. This adds a whole new level to the tension, to the fear. And this is where we get some really great shots of Dr. Loomis, especially when he's giving this speech.
Yes.
And Dean Cundy did a great job of, as he's giving the speech, the way the lighting is that you get these soft little twinkles in Dr. Loomis's eyes that just, it looks great.
Yeah.
I think that pays a lot of dividends as well, because if you can have him talking about this kid's dead fucking eyes and show that his are so full of life, it gives you immediately protagonist, antagonist. It gives you immediately the coin, the heads and tails of what they're supposed to represent morally.
So after Dr. Loomis gives his little speech to Sheriff Brackett about his history with Michael, they move upstairs and Dr. Loomis is showing the sheriff where the incident of the murder we saw in the beginning of the film is with Judith Myers. While Dr. Loomis moves over to the window, all of a sudden this piece of, I believe we think it's the gutters.
Yeah, I think it's one of the gutters.
The gutters comes down and breaks this glass. Instantly startles Dr. Loomis. He kind of doubles back and he pulls out a gun for the first time, a revolver for the first time that we've seen. So now we as the audience know that Dr. Loomis is packing.
Right.
Because Dr. Loomis is a fucking shitty therapist.
So now we know he is a raging alcoholic with a gun.
We know that.
And he's out on the town.
The chick in the beginning, she's on the ground. She almost gets killed by Michael. She had wrestle her hair out. And he's like, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" And he pulls a fucking gun. He's waiting her out. He's got a gun and a flask. And he's like, "He's gone."
But it's also really funny because after he brandishes the gun, the sheriff is looking at him and he goes he's like, oh, oh, I have a permit for this. You must think I'm a very sinister doctor, which I think is a very weird choice of word. You may think I'm a very sinister doctor.
He goes, you must think I'm a very sinister doctor. And I stood up and I was like, we do. We do. I blame you for this.
You know, he's done as much as he can in 15 years.
Oh my God. He's had 15 years to do one job, and that's to keep this exact thing from happening.
He spent 8 years trying to reach Michael and another 7 trying to keep him locked up.
That was good.
He should have spent 8 years trying to reach Michael, 6 years trying to keep him locked up, and one day shooting him in the brain. If this was the problem, if he knew this was going to happen, then there's this problem solved.
Maybe 6 times to be safe.
Oh, shit.
It's a good thing he's got that revolver.
6 times.
Back to Lori and Tommy. She's trying to read him a book. He's not interested. He wants to read comics. But he brings up the boogeyman.
Yeah.
And again, we're back on this idea of, what is the boogeyman? How do you stop him? And you had said this before, PJ, of like, Halloween is a night that we play tricks on each other.
Yeah, it's a hand wave for her to go, what you're worried about's not real.
Yeah. But Tommy, she takes a phone call, and Tommy, he goes over to the window and he looks out and he sees Michael standing at the Wallace's house.
Like in the carport, assumedly just looking at the house.
It is just such a scary shot.
It is the most perfect example of why they call him the Shape.
Yeah.
In this moment.
It's just an outline.
Mm-hmm. But who he is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's no mistake. And the mask, this is where the mask does the heavy lifting.
Yes.
Is these nighttime shots where you can't make out a lot of detail. This is where that mask pays off for being the choice that they made, because the hair is unnatural. The face outline is unnatural. Everything, but it is so starkly white that you can, even in the dark, still see it. It's perfect.
Yeah. And of course, Tommy goes running and saying, oh, the boogeyman's outside. And when Lori looks, he's gone. Again, is it part of the imagination? But now it's like we as the audience know that Tommy has seen him as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So maybe it's not imagination.
But now Tommy has also been watching scary movies on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Is he in a heightened sense of fear because of what he's doing?
Well, and what Annie does for Lori, where it's like, there's nothing here, calm the fuck down, Lori is now doing for Tommy.
Mm-hmm. The child that Annie is then babysitting is Lindsay Wallace, who is played by Kyle Richards. She was in the Tobe Hooper film Eaten Alive, which I believe Robert Englund is in as well. Mm-hmm. She's in a horror film called The Car. She was in The Watcher in the Woods, and then she reprises her role in Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. And then what a lot of people, I guess, know her from is she was in The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills for 281 episodes.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know that those shows run that long. That's insane. But yeah, I guess she's a real housewife. Michael watches Annie through the glass of Annie's in the kitchen of the Wallace home talking to Lori on the phone.
The way he hides in these scenes, like earlier when Annie's walking up to the house and he's behind the tree, and like literally hide and seeking behind the tree. Yeah. And here he awkwardly stands behind like that potted plant that's hanging. Yes. It just reminds you that he's just a kid.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like he, not physically, but where he is stunted, it's like, he might be a creative killer, but I think he gets away with a lot of this stuff because no one's expecting him.
It is almost like something happened 15 years ago that night where something snapped. And at that point, his cognitive development just stopped.
Well, and it's like it stopped there and like he went on pause.
Yeah.
And now you hit play and he immediately goes back to Haddonfield and starts murdering people again.
Right.
But
then in hiding, does he physically knock the plant down, or is it an accident?
He bumps into it.
Okay.
You do see him bump a little bit into it.
Yeah. I've always read it as an oops.
But one of the 2 plants that are hanging there smashes, and Annie hears it.
Yeah.
And for a moment pauses and then doesn't hear anything else, carries on like normal.
Blows it off. Yeah.
But she's standing in the kitchen and she's staring basically above the camera.
Right.
Just like straight off into the distance, talking on the phone. And the family dog of the Wallaces,
Lester,
pushes the kitchen door open and comes in behind her and immediately begins just like baring his teeth and growling and snarling. And she doesn't move. She just stands there and goes, "Oh no, Lori, I think I'm about to be mauled to death by the family dog." And it is the most bizarre delivery. And I've honestly noticed in a lot of her scenes in this movie, she has that, like, she just stares off as she delivers lines. And it's just kind of this like deadpan of I don't know.
And what it does is, to the audience, I think she reads as like an intelligent, but maybe a little too advanced, like emotionally for the rest of her peers. She seems more emotionally grown and less naive than her friends. And it's because of that cynical, sort of sarcastic, jaded feel that she has.
right?
And then, you know, the dog goes outside and she's
Michael 2, dog 0.
Yeah.
the dog sneaks around and Michael bear hugs him to
Fucking
death.
chokes it out.
Which honestly is a pretty cool little camera trick that we kind of looked at. Yeah. So somebody is holding the dog.
It's the dog trainer, like the on-set dog trainer, who I assume was also standing behind the camera getting him to growl and things. But he's in the Michael suit then. So it looks like Michael's doing it. But he apparently wrapped his arms around him and lifted the dog. And then as he just kind of held the dog there in space, the dog's legs go from being tensed up to finally relaxing down into place. And so they shot that and then played it in slow motion. So it looks as if, you know, life is leaving the dog.
Yeah. Now, does Michael stop for a moment and eat this dog as well?
They don't show that on camera.
He must have gotten hungry.
I mean, how long can one man stay satiated?
From dog meat?
On a dog.
Not very long.
What about second breakfast?
You gotta stop talking about Lord of the Rings, you fuck.
Now, for no reason, this is one of my favorite scenes in the film.
Yeah, no reason.
But while Annie's in the kitchen talking on the phone still with Lori, she spills something on her shirt.
I think she's making popcorn.
Yeah, she is definitely making popcorn.
So maybe it was some oil.
Maybe,
got into
yeah.
on her shirt.
But then, like any sane person would do, she immediately strips down to her underwear in the kitchen of this home of the girl that she's babysitting.
Right. Like the babysitter
Like Jill,
from
yeah.
Curse of Chucky. Yeah.
Right.
Now, we should also feel like we should let you know we had to rewind this scene many times.
This is not true.
For research purposes.
This is not true.
Well, we didn't have the controller bug.
Also not true.
Plot twist.
But yeah, she strips down and she uses like baking soda or something to try and, you know, treat the stain, I guess, before eventually taking her clothes out to the she throws on like a white button up, like a man shirt.
Yeah.
That she wears for the remainder of her time in this film. Which
Which
I
is coming to a close.
was just fine with. But she makes it out through the backyard to like their little shed in the back where that's their laundry room. It's a detached laundry room from the house.
You know, like they have in Illinois.
Yeah, I'm sure they
So
definitely
you
do.
can trek through the snow to do your laundry.
I think this is going to bring us to a scene where when I was younger, it didn't really bother me as much. And now that I'm older, I get a sense of claustrophobia in this scene. It is a very cramped space. It is a small, detached washroom.
Well, only made worse by the fact that she then gets stuck.
Yeah.
Like from the waist up, she's like stuck in this room.
Yeah.
And this is also where and Derek, I'll let you kind of explain. This is where we get a lot of good shots of the shape. Especially in the background and a lot of work with black, dark, negative space.
Yeah. So this is where we really start playing with like negative space and open doorways and things in the framing of these scenes. Because as she comes in, she's doing the laundry. The door locks behind her. She, flips the light switch. No lights come on. It's like, okay, great. Now I'm stuck out here in the dark. but there is a doorway that leads into, I don't know,
It's like another
kind of like a closet or something.
Yeah, and it's pitch black.
Pitch black. And it's like, okay, well, we as the audience could think, well, is he in there?
Yeah.
But we do see a shot of him through the window of the door, which has got this very kind of thin curtain on it.
Yeah, or a thin, not a thin blind, or
But you get
cloth.
You get the little sting whenever we see him there. There's another shot where we're seeing through the opposite window past Annie, and you can see Michael in the distance through the other window. Then, but yes, Annie gets stuck. She's screaming to try and get Lindsay's attention. Lindsay is inside watching the Howard Hawks film The Thing for the Dr. Dementia Horathon. So Howard Hawks' The Thing from Another World is the original version of what John Carpenter would then remake in 1982 as The Thing.
And John Carpenter has gone on record saying that Howard Hawks is probably his favorite Hollywood producer of all time. And I think his favorite film that he produced is Rio Bravo.
Okay, yeah, the Western. Michael's watching Annie through all this. Lindsay finally, the phone rings, and it is Annie's boyfriend, Paul, I believe.
Yeah.
Calling, asking where Annie is. So Lindsay finally goes out to the laundry room, rescues Annie from there, and they come back into the house. Michael is then watching Annie from the background of the shot. And again, it's kind of it's not like a super long take, but they come into the kitchen. Annie takes the phone from Lindsay, and she moves back and forth across the kitchen a couple times. And as she does, first, no one is behind her. And then she moves to the left to the sink. And then Michael is in the doorway behind her. She moves back across. And when she moves back to the sink, then Michael is no longer there. We kind of see him duck away.
This is like one of the only shots where you kind of see him like move away.
Which I think is, it's okay to see that a couple times.
Yeah.
You don't have to have Batman. It's all right for him to vanish, but you see him do it. It makes it worse. It makes it real.
Right.
Yeah. And so Lindsay, basically Annie calls Lori at that point and is like, hey, can I bring Lindsay over?
Because I want to go meet up with Paul.
Right. And so she takes Lindsay over to Tommy's house. And this is where we get one of my favorite shots in the whole movie. We talked about it off mic for a while, and I'll just kind of quickly go into it is what I've called, I don't know if we've ever brought it up in this podcast yet, but it's what I call and what other people call a Spielberg oneer. So a oneer in and of itself is just a one take shot. It's a long take of a shot where we, you don't cut, you don't make multiple cuts to get through the geography of a space. You follow the action with one single camera movement. Right. But a Spielberg oneer to me is whenever you move through multiple setups throughout a set, all in one take. And it seems like we've, in this particular example, it seems like 3 individual setups. And so normally you would shoot that as, here's a setup in the living room. We're going to do a shot, reverse shot of, Annie and the kids. And then we're going to shoot in the kitchen, another setup of shot, reverse shot of Annie talking to Lori, and then back into a third setup in the living room again, another shot, reverse shot. Instead, we do this all in one take, moving from living room to kitchen to a 50-50 shot of them talking back and forth. Annie leaves frame. Lori follows. The camera follows. We're back in the living room. Annie then finishes her conversation, leaves the front door. Before all of this has taken place, too, something worth noting is that they, Annie and Lindsay go across the street to the Doyle house. And Bug pointed this out. And, and it is it is just such a little detail, but it's so fucking funny. As they walk across the street, we don't follow them all the way. We follow them up to a certain point, and then they continue, and we stay. And then the funniest fucking thing.
Yeah, so there's a car parked in front of the Doyle house, and as Annie and Lindsay are walking, as soon as they cross like the adjacency of the car, we see Michael just launch up as if he has been crouching the entire time. And we were actually trying to sketch this and perform this, like, as we were watching it, like, how would he be kneeling?
Yeah.
Because when he comes up, his arms are kind of stiff and come forward up and then relax. And it's funny because on rewatch, whenever I look at this, and my wife is probably going to kill me for this, but one of the funniest things that I imagine in that scene in my head canon is there is a scene from the famous Mike Judge show, King of the Hill. And there is a scene where Bobby Hill and Luann are hiding in Bobby's house, waiting for someone to come in, and they're going to surprise them. And when they come in the door, Luann pops out and says, "Surprise!" And Bobby just goes, "Blah." And so whenever Michael pops up from behind the car, I just imagine he's just going, "Blah." And it's just great.
Yeah. And it's one of the, it's again, because it doesn't hurt to show him, not just lurking.
There's a little bit of character to it.
Yeah. That he is methodically moving throughout the scenery, but it is just so weird looking.
Yeah. He's not behind a tree. He's behind a car.
Like this static, formless monster just going, it's so good. But at this point, Annie is like, all right, I'm going to go get laid.
Yeah. She's got to go pick up Paul. And so she goes back out to her car where it is locked. She has forgotten her keys inside.
Yeah.
We follow her back inside the Wallace house where we get another like kind of long take following her into the house, into the living room. She looks around for her bag, goes through it, goes over to the window, to the mirror, puts on some makeup.
It's like a foyer.
And the entire time she's like, "I love Paul. He's really tall. What a cool guy." And like just bullshitting this song about Paul.
But that is like one of the most realistic things ever. Because how many little dumb songs do we make about people like in our lives?
And again, these are 18-year-olds, seniors in high school. What else do they care about right now?
Right.
We don't have TikTok. We don't have cell phones.
Right. And the difference there is the attention span here, because this is another example of the film taking its time to build tension, because we follow Annie this whole time. She finally makes it back out of the car. She has completely forgotten that the car was locked in the first place, because when she makes it back out there, opens it right up without the keys.
Seeing that shot for the first time, I'm just like I'm screaming. Like, what are you doing? How did you not notice this?
Gets in the car, then notices that all the windows are fogged up, and bolt upright from the back seat, Michael pops up and begins strangling her.
Yeah. I've always interpreted this kill as because he starts to strangle her and then just reaches over and slits her throat. And to me, in the first time, even this first watch through, it's like, I've always interpreted it as like a weird decision to be made. Like, but why have him choke her at all? And the last rewatch, I don't know, it feels impatient. It's like he's choking her and she's still fighting him and staying alive. And he's like, yeah, fuck this. And he just cuts her throat open. And then she does the weirdest facial performance. She crosses her eyes like a cartoon and makes them super wide. And she's like, "Ding," and like dies in the most cartoonish fucking weird way.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. But she leans on that horn for a long time. And this is another moment where you're like, hey, Lori, pay attention.
Yeah, that's something else too. I mean, because she hits that horn multiple times. And again, in any other neighborhood, you'd be like, this is probably cause for alarm.
Yeah.
Who would be honking their horn like this at like 9, 10 o'clock at night?
This is Haddonfield. We don't answer the door for anyone, no matter how young and screaming they are.
Wow, that has a payoff later.
It does.
Tommy and Lindsay are then watching Forbidden Planet because that's the next movie in the horror-thon. He hides in like behind the curtain to try and scare her in this bizarre little kid scene. I mean, I guess it works because like kids do weird.
Well, and he's like, look at me, I'm the boogeyman.
Yeah.
And then he fucking turns around and he and Lindsay watch as Michael fucking like princess carries Annie Brackett's dead fucking body back into that house.
Kicks the front door in.
Which again, is like, I'm just the easiest way to get this done possible. I'm not wasting any time. And it's unnerving. And then they go, Lori, the house is on fire.
But I'm going to go ahead and call it. If Lindsay Wallace couldn't see him behind that curtain, she needs glasses.
Yeah.
It was pretty obvious he was hiding behind that curtain.
Bro, that little kid cannot be trusted with a classy driver's license.
Not at all. The thing that I want to point out in this little scene is as he's looking out the window, you hear the music and the sound effects from Forbidden Planet playing off the TV. And so this is an example of John Carpenter using the score of another movie as soundtrack in this movie.
That's cool.
Which is then something that Scream pays homage to by them watching Halloween and then using the Halloween score to score the party scene of their movie, like the finale of their film.
Well, and what's funny is we use that scene in Scream to explain the difference between what is it, the term diegetic?
Diegetic, non-diegetic, yeah.
And it's funny that we see that so obviously done here to then pay off later.
After Tommy is hiding behind the curtains, Loomis is then, of course, hiding in the bushes outside the Myers house.
Again, this man is a menace. He is a danger to himself and others. And the best part of this movie, the kids go up to the Myers house. It's Halloween. It's getting late. Trick-or-treaters going inside. It's late. And even Laurie has begun to mention, like, you guys need to wind it down. It's late. And these kids, Lonnie and the bullies from the middle school or elementary school, go up to the Myers house. Mm-hmm. And all the kids are like, go on, Lonnie, go on, get up there. You should, fuck with the house, go inside, see if there's any half-eaten dogs or skunks, but it's probably dogs.
Why does it smell like skunk?
Why does it smell like dead fucking eaten dog? But so Lonnie goes up to the door and he's fucking with the door. And I'm going to try to do my best impression. Loomis like cups his hands to like throw his voice so it's not obvious of where he's coming from. And then does this weird like
accentation,
he's like,
Lonnie, get your ass away from there.
And it's like so weird. And then Lonnie goes, ah!
And they bolt.
And then Donald Pleasance does this face.
He looks delighted.
He narrows his eyes. He does this dumb fucking grin. And he's just like, this is great.
And then he is hit with the quickest instant karma because he's instantly startled by Sheriff Brackett.
Yes.
The second jump scare that Sheriff Brackett pulls off in this movie.
What an asshole.
And then he reaches fucking Loomis, like goes for his gun. He's like, Lonnie's back.
Linda and Bob then arrive at Lindsay's house, at the Wallace's house. Annie, of course, is already disposed of at this point. Linda, we've already talked about. Bob is her boyfriend, Bob Sims. He's played by John Michael Graham. This is pretty much the only thing he's ever been in. But Michael watches them. So we follow them into the house. And it's another quick oneer of them coming into the house, into the living room. We push in onto them. They start making out on the couch. And then the camera pulls back away from them. And as it does, music cue happens.
Yep.
And then again, we get another shot of Michael stepping into frame to watch them on the couch.
And again, this couple cannot keep their hands off of each other. They're completely oblivious to everything around them. It's also funny to note, too, that John Carpenter has said that Bob and Linda's relationship was what he wanted to have in high school, which is why he enjoyed writing this with Deborah Hill. And he's like, I wish I could have had that kind of relationship.
Yeah.
He's like, Debbie, I wish we knew each other in high because of the cigarettes. I wish we knew each other in high school.
They make a call to Lori, and basically it's revealed that like Lori tells them like, oh yeah, Annie left. Lindsay's over here. Annie left to go pick up Paul. So have a good night or whatever. They go upstairs. They make love.
Well, I mean, I guess you could call it that, because upon careful examination, we found that Bob is actually humping her leg.
Yes.
And now, to be fair, he does not have his glasses on. And now I do not wear glasses.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Once they are done, in this kind of goofy reversal of like gender roles, if you will, Linda is like, go get me a beer.
In the cutest voice.
Yeah.
Go get me a beer.
Yeah. And so Bob then ends up going downstairs. Now, he does use the term, "I'll be right back."
Uh-oh.
So one of the rules in Scream.
Yeah.
He goes downstairs to the kitchen.
And he's like put his clothes on, and I assume in case anybody shows up. And he's like,
We argued about this because I said that's like, why would he tell her, don't put your clothes on? I'll be right back. But then he gets fully clothed.
because if the parents come home, they don't want to see his hanging ball bag. That's my assumption. But so he wanders he goes around and he hears noises. So he opens one door and goes, no, not there. Turns, opens the next door, and in the first jump scare that is Michael, but not the Lonnie jump scare, like the first one where they are in danger of being in this presence, and it's Michael, and he comes out, and this is the most like violent we see him. He like swoops this guy up by his throat with one hand, pins him to the fucking wall, and he's struggling against Michael. But obviously he picks up Judith's headstone and just drags it away with zero sign of it being drugged.
Again, this is a sign of does he exhibit superhuman strength?
Right.
To a degrry.
Bro's jacked. He lives. And he slams this dude up against the wall and pins him to the wall with the knife. And that's where we go. We mentioned this early in the conversation.
Right.
But he just stares like a kid would of like, oh, look at what I did.
And,
wow.
And visually, this shot is incredible because, again, no blood, but we have this excellent play of light and shadow and silhouettes.
Yeah.
It's a gorgeous shot for as gruesome as it is.
And then in an odd and unbelievable shot, Michael then puts a bed sheet over him.
Cuts little holes in his for the eyes.
And then puts glasses on. Bob's fucking glasses. Goes upstairs and is standing in the doorway. And she's like, where's my beer? And her boobies are out. Yeah. And she's just like, what are you doing? Come back to bed. What are we doing?
See anything you like?
What, are you not going to say anything? Fine, you asshole. I'm going to call Lori. And it's like, he's still not saying anything. Why are you okay with this? First of all, if your boyfriend treats you like this, find a new man. You don't need a man.
That's true.
So if you have one, he should at least treat you right. But number two, like, maybe he's having a seizure under there. Like, check on him. He said it's just so weird. So then she calls Lori. Lori's like, as she begins to speak.
As the phone call like connects.
She is then choked out by Michael using the phone cord. Mirroring the call earlier where Annie calls her and is like, what, I was eating. And Lori in her bedroom thinks that it's, Michael because she's seen Michael and now she's getting creepy phone calls. So it kind of mirrors that. But this time, because the first call was Annie, she assumes it's Annie, but it's not Annie. It's Linda getting choked to death and making weird, like moany noises as Michael groans and like kind of strangles her to death. And then in that, the sheet and everything comes off and it's revealed. And I think it's supposed to be a reveal like it was Michael, guys. But it's like, no, yeah, John, we know.
I mean, they don't do any sort of audio cue or sting there. So
No, I don't
know.
I think in the direction it's because in the next kind of part, he brings the phone receiver up to his head, and they wanted to make sure that in that shot it was him in the mask. So PJ Souls knew that in that struggle she needed to bring that sheet off of him.
Okay, fair enough. But then Lori becomes scared.
Yes. Lori, hangs up the phone and then looks across the street and sees the lights inside the Wallace house come on and then go back off.
And I was going to say, after this last rewatch, I know why that creeps me out.
Okay.
In the 2006 remake of When a Stranger Calls, the one with Camille Bell, again, a babysitter in a house being stalked. There is a scene where she's looking out, and it's like this ocean. I think it's like a lakeside or an oceanside house. Like it's a lake house. There is a mother-in-law suite that's further away, and this is after she has gotten some kind of evidence that something is happening. There's somebody here. She looks out the window, and in the mother-in-law suite, the light is on, and then the light goes off, and she has been told at this point that nobody else is there. The person who lives in that place is on vacation.
Yeah.
And that kind of reminded me of, I wonder if maybe that's some kind of what they did in those later movies kind of plays to that, because we talked about why would Michael do that?
Yeah.
If not as a way to kind of to lure her over there.
Right. That someone is there, which then I believe is followed because Lori then tries to make a phone call back and no one picks up. And it's like, she believes that she was just called from that house. She can see that there's activity going on in that house. Why is no one now picking up the phone?
Right.
Immediately following that. This is where Loomis, at this point, after standing for like an hour outside of the Myers house, turns around and he finally spots the car that Michael has been driving around all afternoon.
He's back. The evil is parked.
And then he just starts wandering around the neighborhood in the dark. Yeah. But then
doesn't call anybody, doesn't try to get in touch with anybody, just wanders.
And I
on.
guess because like cell phones don't exist, so he can't easily reach out to the sheriff, who is also patrolling around and stuff. They just have to bump into each other later.
It is odd to walk.
Yes.
But whatever.
So back with Lori, who has now grown suspicious. She goes up and checks on Tommy and Lindsay, who they've gone to bed. And Lori, very dreamlike, walks across the street. It's a long, again, we take our time to get across there. And the Lori theme of the score comes back, and we follow her along over to the Wallace house. She knocks on the front door. She rings the bell. Can't seem to get anybody inside to answer her, which again kind of reiterates this thought of like, but I just saw lights flicker, like come on and off in this house. Like somebody has to be here. Right. My friends are all supposed to be in this house. And she goes around to the back, and that's when, the back door, the glass door of the kitchen is open. She comes into the house. She almost goes to that same closet that Michael just burst out of to kill Bob.
Right.
Yeah.
And instead, she kind of walks through the house. She thinks that she's maybe being pranked, because when she goes in the living room, she's like, ha, gotcha. And nobody's there. House is all dark.
Yeah.
We take our time going up the stairs.
Which is my last Hitchcock reference. This is with the use of stairwells. It really takes its time.
Oh,
with
yeah.
those
It's very
stairwells.
psycho in that.
Yeah.
Because
we see her going up
stairs,
and the reverse shot of her coming up. Yeah.
And at the top of those stairs, something bad is probably going to happen.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, once we see where Michael comes out in this shot, it's from the same bedroom, I believe, that
it's similar. Yes.
So she goes into the bedroom that Linda and Bob had been in before.
Doing it.
And
I think this is really where we find the first hint of his like true personality.
Yeah.
Michael, I mean, because he has staged these bodies, the corpses of her friends. He's staged them in this way that's like sort of abstract. She's laid on this bed spread eagled with Judith Meyer's tombstone, but in this way.
Annie's.
Yeah. That's what I meant by she. And it's like, that's personal to Michael, but then Bob is hung like by his knees upside down in the closet so that he swings out. And then fucking Linda is like crushed into like a
cabinet.
yeah.
Like a section of the closet that's like a little drawer, and she's shoved into it. And like he takes the time to pose them, but it doesn't do anything.
Right.
They're already dead.
And then like the timing of it all, of like him spending the time to do all this, but then how did he know that Lori was going to come in? And then Bob's body swings down into frame and scares her, and then the cabinet just happens to swing open.
And he like guesses perfectly that, okay, these things will happen, and then she'll, and we're just speculating,
right.
But then she'll end up in this corner. And then in what I think is the most effective shot in any horror film I've ever seen, period. She leans up against this open door. They've been playing with open doorways and black negative spaces for 40 minutes now. And from the dark, the thing we've expected to happen the entire time finally does. And they just slowly change the color, brighten that closet, and his fucking mask just appears in that negative space. And finally they meet, and he attacks her. And he misses because he's a jabroni, but he almost gets her. The knife cuts through her shirt on her sleeve, and he has cut across her arm. And then
she tumbles over the banister down the stairs.
And you finally get that excellent use of bump, bump, bump. And it's so good. And she tumbles down the stairs, miraculously breaks 0 bones. And then he rounds the landing, looking down at her and just starts the walk. And it's like, yeah, he's probably not going to stop anytime soon.
Right. The front door is locked, so she runs into the kitchen, where the glass door of the kitchen is now locked and then braced from the outside with like a rake.
Right.
Which means that Michael has at some point done all of this, has set this up to trap her in the house with him now.
Right. She manages to smash the window in a way that I think he should have smashed the car window in the beginning. And she gets the rake out of the door and escapes. And then it's basically just cat and mouse. She runs to the neighbor's house. I hate this sequence so much.
Yeah.
In this little town where everybody knows each other, why the fuck would one of these neighbors just completely ignore this woman, this young woman screaming, "Oh my fucking God, help me," at the top of her lungs? Like the blinds even open and they look out and they're like, nah, fuck this. And they turn the porch lights out. Now it is Halloween.
Yeah.
It's a quiet town. Are these pranks really being done on Halloween out here?
Yeah.
Right.
It feels like, I don't know. Just don't include this.
And her performance in this part is really strong.
Oh, yeah.
She's
It's great.
screaming.
Yeah.
It's great.
She even like tripped on cue, like running to the neighbor's house. I mean, she's given it 110%.
But eventually we see Michael round the corner of the backyard. What he was doing, who knows? But he rounds the corner and he begins to chase her again. She runs back to Tommy's house, banging on the door. Tommy, it's me, let me in. Sleepily, this poor little kid. Good kid performer.
Yeah. Not bad.
But he walks down and he lets Lori into the house.
Just in the nick of time.
Right. And then we have realized on subsequent rewatches that the very long tower window that's in the living room is already open.
Mm-hmm.
Wind is blowing the curtains. It's already open. So not only does he have a way in, but he probably has several, is my interpretation.
Yeah, she runs inside.
We have no idea. Yeah.
She runs inside, checks the phone. The line is dead.
Yes.
She cannot make a call. And she turns the lights off.
Which is, as much as anybody has a problem with how does Michael know how to drive, how the fuck would Michael know how to cut a phone line? Again, nitpick, but he was 6 when he went into a mental hospital. Why would he know how to cut whatever? Doesn't matter.
Oh, his phone lessons were after his driving lessons.
Damn. Kids these days have it so easy. They just learn math. He attacks her.
Yeah. Over the couch, stabs, and she pulls a long knitting needle out of her bag and stabs him in the side of the
throat, dude. Now, something here that's important is this is the first time she doesn't stamp on his head until it's pulp.
Right.
Andy Barclay, he smashes Chucky's head like a melon. That's what you're supposed to do. But she's just like, oh my God, I'm safe. And she drops any amount of weapon. She takes his knife and, leaves it alone. And
like in that moment, and people make that comment all the time. But in that moment, I think it is. If you look at her, she looks at that knife for a second and then she throws it down almost in disgust. Of I think it's the realization of like,
oh my God, this is probably what just fucking killed my friends.
Exactly.
My best friends in the world are dead. And it's probably because of this stupid piece of metal.
She goes upstairs to check on the kids again.
Mm-hmm.
And, comforts them saying like, the boogeyman's dead. I killed him.
We're fine. Whoops. As he comes up the stairs behind them.
Yes.
They start screaming.
She hides them in a closet and then in one room and then moves into the other bedroom.
And again, John Carpenter is a fucking genius because he shows in this moment, she runs, tries to trick him by opening a door to the outside and then runs into the closet and ties it shut, hoping he will mistake where she went.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But Michael is also methodical and an animal and knows that that's not true and chases her into the closet where he shreds the fucking door, kicks his way in. I'm gonna get you. And she stabs him in the fucking eye with a wire hanger.
Yeah, I'm going to go on a limb and say this is the toughest obstacle he's had to face this entire movie is that closet door.
Yeah.
I mean, he had to really fight for that one.
Yeah. He's like punching it like the Frankenstein monster.
He nails it. And then she nails him.
Yes. And after the stab to the eye, he drops the knife, which then she takes and stabs him. And he again collapses on the floor.
Mm-hmm. So then she immediately goes back to the children and is like, guys, you need to go outside and you need to run
to the Mackenzie's house.
Yes.
And you need to tell these people, scream help, go get help, yell fire in the theater, go do that right now. And they do. And it's the cutest little fucking shot of those little kids running, going, help us, It's just so cute.
At which point Dr. Loomis goes, terrified children.
He looks and he goes, I'm going to scare the fuck out of these kids.
Someone beat me to the punch.
Hey, Tommy, get your ass away from there.
But he recognizes that, well, that's where he is.
And then as Laurie kind of tries to collect herself, leaning up against the door frame, we get the other most iconic shot probably from the entire film of Michael sitting upright and the head slowly turning in her direction as that music cue starts again. Dun,
just chilling.
Dun, dun, dun.
His setup that's the scariest Michael moment in the whole movie.
And I have a note this, I wrote Nick Castle has an excellent core.
Oh, he's shredded.
Like you said, it was almost robotic.
Crunch fitness, dude. He's shredded.
He grabs Laurie, starts strangling her at the top of the landing. Mm-hmm. And that's when Loomis has made it into the house up the stairs. And in that struggle, Laurie pulls off the mask, as we mentioned before. And Michael does take that moment to pause. We see his face for just a brief moment there, but he pauses to pull that mask back over because, much like Rorschach, he is not himself without that mask.
Right.
It feels like he is incapable of doing the animal things he wants to do unless he is hidden behind that lair.
Yeah.
And Loomis puts good work to all 6 chambers of that revolver.
Yeah. He says later on in subsequent films, he will say out loud, I shot him 6 times. And it's because right now he shoots him 6 times.
Causing Michael to fall off over the balcony into the yard.
Right.
And there's, they take a beat.
We follow Loomis kind of like going to where he
kind of comforting Laurie for a moment of like, Laurie has finally, like, she's almost broken down into being a child again of like, was that the boogeyman? Is this real? What is going on? And he's like, I believe it was.
So I wrote this note because she goes, was that the boogeyman? And he goes, as a matter of fact, it was. And I'm like, damn, Loomis quit drama school to be a therapist because that's the most sassy bitch line I've ever. As a matter of fact, like, what happened to the kid who wanted everything? He got like Willy Wonka shit. Like, it is the most like, ooh, but he's a fucking therapist.
And then, yes, he creeps over to, very slowly collects himself, walks to the balcony and looks over, and not with any surprise.
Yeah.
Loomis looks down and Michael is gone from the yard.
It is very much his facial journey of, well, fuck yeah. All right. This is what I figured would happen.
And
it is. He has zero doubt that that's what's going to happen.
And then I also love, my favorite part of that is as we get that visual of Michael gone, we get the Halloween theme back in.
Mm-hmm.
We get that 5/4 time.
Yeah.
Everything is uneasy again.
And then as he just kind of looks off into the night, and then we get several shots of, the landing of the stairs, the living room, the kitchen, the outside of the Wallace house, the outside of the Doyle's house, and then the outside of the Myers home where we cut to credits.
Yeah. Playing with that, well, now he's gone and you shot him as many times as humanly possible with the gun you're equipped with. You shot him and he's still alive.
And we know he is because those last shots are played with his breathing.
Yes.
We hear his breathing in the mask as we're seeing all of these places that he was and now could be.
Yeah. It is after all of this time, and you hear people laugh and, they kind of mock this one of like, well, there's no jump scares. We mentioned that earlier on in this review. And, oh, well, it doesn't hold up. It's not, it's not scary.
It's not
old.
bloody. It's
anybody who can watch this and not understand the psychological thriller and the way it plays with the space it has to show you that you're never as safe as you think you are.
One of the interesting perspectives I had with watching this movie, you know, my nephew and niece come over a lot, and they're younger. My nephew's 12. My niece just turned 16.
Okay.
We watched this movie, and they liked it, but you know, it was like, okay, yeah, it was good. Then in kind of another film that kind of plays off of this, The Strangers. It's very, very similar. Masked antagonists, you know, seemingly with no motive.
Home invasion. Yeah.
They watched that movie, and my nephew kind of had the same reaction at the end. Was that's it? You know, because you were home. Like, okay. To us, in that older perspective, that is terrifying.
Yeah. I've done nothing
senseless, non-motive murder is terrifying. But funny story, he said it was nothing. I then get a phone call from my sister-in-law, his mother, very upset that her son is having nightmares about strangers outside the window.
Hell yeah, brother.
So
yeah, that's what it is. That's what this podcast is all about, is scaring your children. That's right. No, I you know, at the end of each one of these, and obviously we'll go over the entire franchise in its length, but what a way to start.
Yeah.
What a way, what a long way. We said it was going to run long, by the way, so don't get onto us. But what a fantastic way to kind of begin what will eventually crumble into ashes, but for now is a tremendous franchise, is a tremendous entry into the, you know, you and I were talking about our Mount Rushmores of horror at the very beginning of this show. That's what we talked about. And we had this guy on both of our Rushmores. Yeah. Because you do not get much better than this.
And you don't get to the other ones without him.
Right. It is a building block that is fundamental, because this is one of the scariest things that a person can imagine living in the modern world. What do you do when people turn into this and for some fucking reason you're in the sights? So to wrap up, first of all, Bug, thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. I mean, like I said, I remember the day you guys hit me up and said, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And I was like, I couldn't think of two better guys to do it. It's been a lot of fun, especially this movie. I was so glad I got to come in and do this movie.
Yeah. And like I said, the second we decided we were going to do this podcast, the first, as we were going over guests, this is the first one. You and I have, we both have and you do as well, but you and I wore the Halloween Horror Nights, Michael, like very centric Halloween shirt at the same time to that subsequent year. And we were like, well, one of us has to change. And then we both did. And then there was no more of this story. But the whole point is, you know, we're happy that you were here. We're happy to have this discussion. But the final thing that we have to do, like we do in every single one of these, is Derek Rosenberg, do you recommend to friends, family, and strangers the film Halloween?
It goes without saying that, yes, this is a perfect film. I recommend to everyone.
Yeah. Bug, do you recommend this movie often?
Yes, wholeheartedly. Absolutely recommend this movie. And in fact, I would go even one step further and say, check out the rest of John Carpenter's stuff.
Yeah.
Even his non-horror.
Yeah.
If you liked this movie, it only gets better.
Yeah. I recommend this movie to basically everybody. As I've told people about this podcast, you know, I've said, you know, if you want to listen to Scream, great. That's what we're starting with. And then, you know, when we were in Evil Dead, I was like, yeah, we're going over Evil Dead right now. And, you know, you talk about these franchises and I was like, to everybody I've talked to, I've basically said, well, you know, definitely give it a listen, or at least, you know, when we come out with Halloween, you know, you got to give it a listen, because it's like, this is the thing that makes this genre make sense.
Yeah.
So, we will obviously be back for the subsequent Halloweens. But in the meantime, stay tuned to the Third Channel Podcast. Thanks for tuning into the Third Channel Podcast. Please, if you have the time, rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast apps.
You can follow us on social media at Third Channel Podcast, and you can find me online at ThatDRosenberg.
You can also reach out to us at thirdchannelpodcast@gmail.com, where we check every message we swear. Third Channel is hosted by PJ Minette
and Derek Rosenberg. Theme song and audio engineering by Fly Guy Ty.
The logo designed by Bell DeVelco.
Episode artwork by Nathan Walkington.
Keep it tuned right here to the Third Channel for all things horror. And remember, don't touch that dial.
egg salad and eggs.